they're in a free fall and none of them know what the solution is.
Yeah.
I don't think they know how to fix the problems that they have. I don't think they like it's one of these things where you go, okay, well, do we do this? Do we focus on this? Like, do we need to overhaul the game plan? Well, they just had Carrigan call, right, as if they have a stand-in. That's their words. And then you had them lose to Saw, and it's not meant to be disrespectful to Saw, but it's a team that, with the way that we frame FaZe, should be eating them for breakfast on the stage environment, and their players couldn't shoot straight, which is the one thing that you talk about with your Ropses, your Brokies, your Frozens. They should just be able to outskill a lot of people, and that doesn't look good either. So everything is kind of fucked over there.
The world is changing quickly. Shut up.
The world is changing, but one thing remains the same. Victories with 1xBet.
Sell in-game items at the best prices in just a couple of clicks. We are the biggest instant sell service for in-game items like Counter-Strike 2, Dota 2, and Rust. Easy selling process and instant withdrawal of funds to the most popular payment methods. More than 140,000 deals and 50,000 active sellers every month. Use promo code HLTV5 and get a 5% bonus on the sale of your skins. Skin Place. Sell items now.
Since the dawn of CSGO, we have been there. Observers of all that competition can reveal. Elation, fear, triumph and heartache reach out from every frame. From the small studios and conference rooms to the epic arenas, the feeling is still the same. We live and breathe this game. This was CSGO Through the Lens. Buy now at hltv.org/shop.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Counter-Strike fans around the globe, welcome back to another episode of HLTV Confirmed. Nohte will be joining us soon. He's just having a few little technical issues. We'll get that sorted. We'll get him in. Quick shout out to the sponsors, of course, 1xBet. Remember to gamble responsibly, and Skin Place, the place to be. That's all it had to be. Just nice and simple. Yeah, just like that. You just had to do something nice and simple, Chad, didn't you? But if you need some skins, go and check out Skin Place, new sponsor of the show. All right, tonight, as mentioned, we're going to have Nohte. He'll be joining us. He'll be here shortly. But we've got Prof, we've got Striker. You saw them just the other day on the live show. Striker, how was your travel? Did you drive again?
No, I didn't drive. My
Thank
travel
God.
was, considering my flight got rebooked and canceled and whatever, because it was overbooked or something, my travel was actually surprisingly okay, because I ended up being only like an hour and a half late. So actually, heavy plus sign for the solution. Because,
I need everyone to read between the lines there. Striker on the travel day had his flight rebooked because it was overbooked. Is
Yeah.
that correct? All right.
Pretty
so we
much.
had to put some pieces of the puzzle together
He
there,
wasn't late to
Striker.
the
It wasn't.
flight. He wasn't hungover.
No, I didn't miss anything. I like, the thing was, probably I should have checked in the day before. Then I wouldn't be one of those people who gets fucked by the fact that there's
see.
overbooking. So I just forgot to check it until the morning of. And then it put me on a waiting list and blah, blah, all the rest of it.
What do you say to the three gentlemen in the lobby of the player hotel who wanted to have their photo book signed, but you weren't there?
I thoroughly apologize. I told them I would be at the hotel, and I thought they meant our hotel, because I don't know if they thought.
Why would you think that?
Because they said something like, "We saw you at the hotel," and I didn't remember seeing them at the player hotel. I thought they were just at our hotel or something, and
I think
they're
it's a
like staying in.
reference to an earlier day or maybe earlier year. But they were
I don't know.
pretty nice gentlemen. I
Yeah.
actually saw them the day before you saw them, and they asked me like,
You said he was like a blonde owner pixel or something.
Yeah.
he kind of is. No,
No,
isn't he?
really, he just has glasses.
Well, that's how I see the world. Maybe I need glasses, which I actually do wear.
You do
sometimes.
wear
But
glasses.
No, I saw these gentlemen the day before, and they're like, "Okay, sign the book." I signed the book, and they're like, "Where's Striker?" And don't say "fucking my mom" because you said that last year. And I was like,
That
"That was
sounds
a
like
great
you.
joke last year. I had that was a great joke." But yeah, I don't know where we were and where his mom was this year. So.
This is a good feeling while we wait for Note to fix his business, so it shouldn't be too long.
How's everything for you? I saw you past 12 in the lobby, which is unexpected for a Chad Sponge Virtual, achievement unlocked.
It is true. I do hate almost everybody and everything. Well, that was the final night, and you're not going to see a lot of those people again for a little while, so you just hang around for an extra chat. But the main reason, if I'm going to be honest, the main reason that I was in the lobby for an extended period of time is because I ordered food and they kept being waylaid due to lack of drivers at that time of night. So by the time that it actually arrived, it was probably an hour and a half after I had already ordered the food. But it was still warm, so that's all right. That's not too bad. It was still warm. I had a travel debacle as well. Alex and I went to go get to the flight at like 1:30. So we left to go to the airport on a train at about 10 a.m. or whatever. That was fine. And we get there and we're sitting at the gate and we're waiting. And they're like, oh, okay, there was an issue with one of the screens when they were landing. It's gone black. They've been trying to change the screen. The engineers have been on the plane ever since they landed, but the screen's still not working. So you're going to have to change gate. So Alex hurt his ankle while we were in Cologne. And he's been limping the whole time. So we had to go from A2 to A36, which is on the other side of the airport. So that was a nice lengthy walk. And then we got there and they're like, yeah, the plane is smaller. So we're offering 400 euros and a chance for you to go to CDG before you go to Malta and land about 10 hours after you're meant to. If you'd like to do that, everybody get up. So some people got up and took the 400 euros and extended the travel day. Now we sat there and we were delayed probably for about 3 hours, but it all worked out. Still got home by 6:30. It's not too shabby. Everyone loves traveling. It's great fun, isn't it?
It is. Mine was smooth.
Yours was smooth?
Yeah.
All right, nothing to complain about there. Well, overall, I think Note's not in his chair right now. I'm sure he'll be here shortly. Don't worry about that.
Just roll on without him, and when he joins, he joins.
We can do, but we can keep it light and fluffy still. We never really get to do this. We never really get to keep it light. Like normally we get straight into the thick of things, and we may as well use this time right now. How was the event overall for you guys? You guys had the HL, did Martin have a booth? Was he showering you all in champagne?
Oh, yeah. We had a little box. It was
It was probably one of the best ones too. Like we were some of the years before, not last year. I think we didn't have one in the last couple of years, but some of the earlier years we had like one on the side or something. This time we were like almost straight down the middle. It was like the second best almost.
There was high demand. There's some people that needed to be kicked out because I don't know how they got there. It was a vibe. There's a lot of cool peeps. Apparently the Talon didn't have their own box, so they came to ours. That was nice.
They could have gone to the EFG one. I don't know where the EFG one was, but they could have gone there.
But I think that one's dog shit on the side.
Oh, okay.
At least
so
it
the
was last
HLTV
year.
one was better.
Yeah.
All right. I think Note's here. Note, are you here?
Nope.
Oh,
not talking again.
He's here in spirit. He's here in spirit. That's close enough.
Well, at least someone from Spirit is here or anywhere.
They're around. The tournament's over now.
Feels like they ghosted Cologne, if we could say that.
I think we've killed the show matches as well, by the way, which is great. Did you guys even bother watching the show match?
Absolutely no. We were actually recording some content on the riverbank with the backdrop of the Cologne Cathedral.
I kicked up some fuss about it. I said, why are we doing a show match on a day where there's a best of 5 anyway? I definitely let my feelings be known about the waste of time show match.
Yeah, I imagine a lot
of point of it.
Hello? Is he?
I should be working now. Yeah.
He's working. Hey,
Nice.
Notes. Welcome to HLTV Confirmed.
Thank you.
Technical issues.
I broke this cable and trying to twist my mic. And so
that is broken.
That's what happened.
Oh,
that does look broken.
Yes.
Right, well, it's fixed now.
I feel like you're too strong. You should do less gym, for example. I think that's
understood.
We've been treading water, waiting for you to turn up. So it's great that you're here now, because now we can actually get into things. How did you watch Cologne? Was it too harsh on the time zones?
Honestly, not bad. even especially with some of the longer BO3s, I was waking up at 6:45. I was still watching 2.5 matches, if not 3 matches. So worked out.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess we can just get into things, shall we, gentlemen? We don't have to mess around too much. Shall we just do it? Shall we just jump in? There's no need for the stinger, the bumper, because I want to start with Cologne. I want to start with what's freshest in everybody's mind after the event concluded on Sunday. It's Tuesday, so we're turning this around pretty quickly, but it was obviously the Vitality versus NAVI grand final with Vitality lifting the trophy, Zywa getting the MVP. It was a 4-mapper in the best of 5. We didn't need Anubis. The 4th map started to look like a bit of a blowout, but those before of Mirage was a banger. Nuke went into overtime as well. Dust 2 had legs to it, but overall a pretty entertaining series. Watching from inside the arena, Prof and Striker, was it one of those things where you felt you were glued to the screen, the atmosphere? How was it all?
I think during map 3, I remember having this conversation. Or was it map 3? 4? No, map 3. We had this conversation with Bercho, who is an eternal best of 5 hater. He's like, wouldn't it be better if it ended here? This was like during the 2nd overtime or whatever it was, maybe 3rd overtime that was happening on the 3rd map. And I'm like, no, I would much rather if we had 2 more maps of this. But then I saw how it ended and I was like, yeah, but now Navi's getting fucked. So I actually agree with you because this is how it's going to turn out. And that actually ended up being the truth. But I mean, for the first 3 maps, it was an amazing final. Great atmosphere in the arena as well.
What do we think, like, as far as best of 5 finals go, because a lot of people throw around, most entertaining match of the year, or, there's one of the best of 5 finals. For you guys, when you think about that sentiment, there's been a lot of best of 5 finals, right? But in terms of ones in arenas that have actually delivered in a best of 5 capacity, I think always go to the Fnatic versus FaZe one. That's
Katowice, right?
Yeah, that was with like the flusher clutches and stuff, like the flusher
G2 Luminosity.
G2 Luminosity.
Wasn't that the best of 5? Scream and Shocks and G2.
Yeah, I know which. It was like was it ECS or some shit?
I think it's ECS or EPL London. It was in London.
Yeah, it was in London. I remember what you're talking about. That was a good one.
There was a VPSK one too, right?
Epicenter. Yeah. And obviously Cologne last year, and that's kind of it, no? That's like 6, 7.
2 years ago.
What was it? The G2 FaZe one?
The Katowice one,
but it was only 3 maps, though, right?
No,
yeah,
22.
Close.
Yes.
Yeah, those stick out.
Loads of overtimes in that one as well. Yeah, it was good.
Does this one join that list? Do you think?
I think it's up there. So. Yeah.
Why not?
I mean, it's like contender for series of the year just because of the back and forth of the initial part of the game. I think Vitality came in with such a good game plan, but then it just seemed like the first 45 seconds, Vitality were like running away with rounds, and then every single late round, Navi were clawing back. I think it just made for a really fun like push-pull to the whole series, for a lot of it at least, up until Inferno. And then Dust 2 is like, some of those retakes that they were getting on B-Man was just ridiculous.
I think those retakes, and even the one on Mirage where a bit an Imma retake from Cat, I think those retakes talk to, and I don't mean this in a negative way because it's obviously arena, not the most experienced names across both teams in terms of, huge arena matches in those pressure environments. It talks to the quality of the Counter-Strike. I'm talking about from a fundamental standpoint of what you would traditionally expect to see, as opposed to an entertaining standpoint, because it was very entertaining, but mistakes need to happen for those things to be possible. When was the last
are you saying that the quality was not good?
There was a lot of missed shots.
Yeah.
There was a lot of post-plant scenarios that should have been converted that weren't. I think Mezzi made a comment after the final, didn't he, about it not necessarily being the best CS, which I think is a fair surmise. I
feel like the whole playoffs were like this. You could watch any game in the arena. There was crazy shit going down. It was not clean Counter-Strike in any way. And I'm not saying every arena tournament is like this, but oftentimes it is. There's a lot of this kind of going on. And when it's not, then we have, super dominant run of one team that just, doesn't make that many mistakes. But this tournament was definitely who's going to make the least mistakes or the least egregious mistakes, or the ones that are going to like bite you in the ass the least, because everyone was doing them. Like that retake from short, what Spinks was doing in that, like with the email last second defuse, like it makes no sense. And that would never happen in the group stage. That kind of play would not he would just wait for like half a second, and he'd win the round, right? So stuff like that was kind of crazy.
Yeah, but that's essentially the sentiment, right? Like that I was going with is that it was very entertaining, but it is entertaining because of the mistakes that were being made. But I think that people could acknowledge that it wasn't the cleanest, purest CS and I think it's more on an individual either decision-making basis, and that's a good way to identify and quantify pressure and show, right? Like some of the misses as well as some of the decision-making shows the pressure that these people are under in the match, in a final, in the crowd, right? All of those bits and bobs.
I think, I think the biggest example of that must have been Wonderful in that Mirage where I don't know how many misses cost them, like directly cost them rounds. And it felt like it was getting more, there was more pressure on him the more time went on. And like there were rounds where it looked like he was getting back into it, but then he had another 2 rounds where he had just kind of like some inexplicable misses, you know. So that's what happens sometimes in these arena games for sure, yeah.
But that's what you want to happen, right? But that's because this is where they're being tested the most.
Yeah.
I think from a tactical standpoint, however, it was still quality. Like in terms of the mind games that they were trying to play with each other from the in-game leader or calling perspectives, the adjustments that were being made. A lot of like high-level teams, especially these two teams, play a lot of like nameplate in Counter-Strike, right? What is the expectation of the bomb site holds? Always having, especially on Mirage, like a loose piece that's meant to be on the other side of the map in that A bomb site when those hits were coming in. So those details were definitely in play. So I think from like a tactical and like the calling perspective, from like the coaches and the in-game leaders, I think we were still getting high-level CS. I think in a lot of
apart from maybe the overtimes of Mirage, I know that's like once you get to that point, it gets a bit chaotic and like people kind of call, yeah, exactly, when you call spawn-based and whatever. But there were like some rounds from Vitality where you were like, you just played an amazing round. Like it was the perfect execute, perfect timing. And then the next round, Apex goes out from a smoke from apps. Another guy peeks solo a bit. Another guy just dies in B apps for absolutely no reason, just like peeking everywhere solo. And it's just like, it went from some really beautiful rounds to rounds like this, and they were just going back and forth. But I guess, I mean, yeah, this happens in triple overtime games where people are like, it's also kind of like a fatigue thing where people aren't always at the highest level of play.
Do you think we're seeing this more now though, in terms of arena games? Just these more chaotic overtimes, or not overtimes, but chaotic matches and maps in general where teams aren't as consistent? Because I feel like if you go back maybe 3 years pre-COVID or just after COVID, like you weren't seeing this much inconsistency for the top teams.
Well, we're kind of just in that period of time though at the moment, aren't we? Where there's
I don't mean like inconsistency as in who's winning. I mean like this kind of chaos in those games that come close.
I understand what you mean. I kind of agree with that. I've been talking about it, and I think in part it's also why Navi have been finding a lot of success, because a lot of these individualistic teams are playing way too loose sometimes, and even like in rounds where they're not supposed to, you know, it's like an easy 4v3, 5v4, 5v3, where, you know, you will have people just peeking solo for no reason and an advantage, you know, and this happens so much across basically, I mean, even all the top teams, you know, apart from possibly Navi, even for them it happens sometimes, but they're probably the least egregious in that. But all the G2s, FaZes, Vitalities, they have like these crazy rounds where somebody just makes a solo play for no apparent reason, you know, and throws rounds like this all the time. So I agree with that sentiment for sure. I mean, CS has been a bit like heading a bit too into the individualistic direction, and I'm not sure why that is necessarily sometimes.
But I think that there is more onus put on individuals with the way the Counter-Strike's being played to make a play once the information comes in, right? Because you're looking at what are the percentages of what the mental picture that we've built of what they're doing is. And then they go for these like individual crawls or these little looks, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. And I guess that's the beauty of what's going on now. Like the logic is there, but we might not always be able to piece it together. We're just like, why the fuck did that guy just run out B? Like what was he doing there? But obviously there was something in their game plans and their discussions that I mean, sometimes together.
But you can't make that excuse a lot of the time. Like a lot of the time it is just objectively really horrible play sometimes because they're just not thinking through the situation, you know. They're just over peaking in situations where they're not supposed to, and like very clear cut situations, you know. So it's not just down to
and stuff is why we had bad post plants though, don't you? Like the way that they were playing in those scenarios, that where times where they could have just played the bomb, they either like stayed and took duels. Like think about the Crossfire. I think this was that in the MOUZ series. I forget which. I think it was the MOUZ
like
series.
G2 or what?
MOUZ Navi Inferno, I think it was. They had like a 2v2 post plan on the A site, and they both are just taking like they had one guy on the site box in the middle of the site, and it's just the way they were taking the fights. Like I know they were pinned, but they just took these duels. Like instead of, I don't know, there's just a lot of situations throughout the course of the weekend where I thought if they'd played the bomb or they had played the scenarios a bit different. But then again, that goes back to the pressure that they're under in the environment, and then you get the entertainment out of it. So if anything, I'll take it, right? Because we got really entertaining Counter-Strike for the course of the weekend overall.
I mean,
So,
generally in CS2, just staying put is less favorable than in CSGO. So that's why like everyone is being pushed to do more plays all the time, and I think that's why it sometimes gets out of control, right? I think it's a simple approach and nothing really. I mean, obviously, in some places, in some rounds, you can just say like objectively bad decision, you know. But that's the trend I see, at least.
I was gonna say though, I'm not complaining. It's far more entertaining to watch than Counter-Strike was like 2 years ago.
I mean, at least we're getting the 2v2 retake on Inferno A site. Usually, it was just like, I'll just save, you know. There's no point in even trying. So I think it's pretty fun. I think also, on the other hand of not doing unexpected moves, you get those T sides that like G2 Mirage against MOUZ on the T side 0 rounds, or you get the Liquid T side on Mirage against FaZe when people are so predictable in what they're doing because they're moving as a team. And it's just like, they're taking mid, so we can just like focus on mid or give a, you know, there's no fear of a random play that can just like destroy everything, you know, just some guy walking into B solo, you know, with nothing. Stuff like this, even though it's stupid, it just keeps people on your toes. So it's hard to quantify when this is a good play and when it's not, because sometimes it's you just need to make a risk, even though it's not like a 50+%, you know.
I think obviously the storyline perspective, Apex finally lifting a Cologne or Katowice, right? The French angle on that as well, considering how rich the French history has been throughout Counter-Strike, finally lifting a Katowice or Cologne, obviously Cologne in this regard. The MVP for ZywOo this time round being in success and not in defeat like it was against Liquid back in 2019. And I guess overall the first trophy for Vitality this year, which is one of the big talking points, because I was starting to get a little bit disenchanted with Vitality in the lead up. I think late in the season, in the last half, the first half of the year, not the last half.
Yep.
The conversation felt like, okay, they're just having to do all of these active moves to take out the decision making because it felt like they couldn't trust their players. I didn't feel that they had played that way this entire event, and I think I even maybe mentioned that when we did the podcast the other day live. I don't know how much we got stuck into the nitty and the gritty of that, but it didn't feel like to me that they needed to go in that regard in this event. I think they do more direct stuff than Navi by comparison, and I thought it was nice with the pregame interviews that we had with the conversation with Alexi. He said that they practice them a lot and they're very explosive. And then the interview with Mezzi said they're very structured, but both kind of praised the team's opposite individuals, which I thought was, you know, obviously a standout. Both of these teams have players, when you look position for position, who are very strong in those roles at the moment. Bit with the off game on Nuke, I feel like that cost Navi big time. Big time. Like I feel like they could have won that map.
Yeah, it was like 1 and 11 at the end of the first half.
It was pretty rough. And that clutch against ZywOo as well, like you could see that's the nerves, man. When's Bit ever finding himself in that situation? Like that was tough. And then Wonderful obviously compounding on top of that in the maps to come. Like Wonderful also had that whiff from lobby, right? I forget exactly, was it on the ramp push? But yeah, there was just some tough moments, which obviously all added into an exciting series. But yeah, if you go back and you try and, I don't even know if you're Navi and you go back, where do you even look at this as the game was lost? Because you feel that you could have had it done 3-0.
I mean, it could have been, yeah, exactly. It could have been 3-0 for them instead of 2-1 against them. So I don't think, honestly,
there was also that JL 1v3 on Mirage.
Mirage was the one. Yeah, Mirage was the one where they probably shouldn't have even gone to overtime. I mean, they won something like 5 clutches right throughout that map. So I mean, Vitality should have probably come away with a much cleaner game. I mean, some of those clutches were ones that realistically they shouldn't have thrown away, so like at the same time there are mistakes that allowed that game to go to overtime in the first place. So they're probably gonna see that and understand, okay, we actually didn't play a good Mirage. We didn't get to overtime because of our game plan or because we played better together. It was really just 5 clutches, getting them out of a really bad situation. So outside of that, though, Nuke, I mean, generally it felt like IMA against the world a lot of the time. I mean, throughout that series, even Mirage as well, like he was also pulling them out of situations where they should have probably lost earlier than they did, and both of those overtime games, he was having a banger of a game. He was having a really good final up until the last map, effectively. So I was actually kind of sad for him because I think it would have been a really cool story, from getting the calls to get kicked about 6 months ago. Everybody was calling for him to get kicked and for them to get somebody better at that star role, and then for him to turn it around and then come away with the Cologne MVP would have been really amazing. It obviously still is a really good performance for him. He's going to end up somewhere at the top of the EVPs anyway. But I was kind of rooting for him or Flamesy to get it this time, instead of a kind of a boring ZywOo one, because it felt
ZywOo.
It kind of was in the end, because like there were a few moments, that ZywOo had, but generally it was kind of like one of those ZywOo games where he has his impact, he has his output, but you don't really notice him a lot of the time. And that's not like playing on the memes or anything like that. He just didn't have a lot of big moments. And throughout the whole tournament, I didn't feel like he was having a particularly good tournament for like a ZywOo. Obviously, I'm talking about ZywOo standards. I'm not talking about like any sort of other player, It just felt like it would have been a much nicer story if like Flamesy gets it, because, even after getting put in CT positions that don't really suit him, and all that stuff, and then he would come away with the MVP. He got very close. I mean, until maybe map 3-4 of the final, like we weren't necessarily sure if he could come away with it, but he probably needed a little bit of a better final to overtake ZywOo in the end.
Important clutches though, right? He had the 1v2 against Bit and Wonderful on Mirage, and he had the one against Bit on Squeaky Door on Nuke, right? And those were both late in the game. I forget where the Mirage one happened exactly, but
it was also like just in, I think, the second OT or something.
Yeah, okay.
It's funny because in our news chat, I just typed like 2 rounds before. I was like, oh, Z was at like 25 kills, but I feel like we haven't seen a big round out of him. Like it doesn't seem like he's having crazy impact when the game's in the last few rounds where the game got really tight. And then he had that 2K in connector where he hit the flick, and then he had that 1v2 right after. And I was like, okay, cool. Just shit on me.
That's exactly. That's just ZywOo sometimes. Like you just give him enough time, he's going to come up with one of those plays. But I mean, from kind of Vitality's perspective, I did want to shine a bit of a light on Flamesy generally.
Sure.
Not just because of him being in a kind of an MVP discussion, but also because the CT sides look a little bit more decisive from him. You saw that. I'm not sure if this is something that they've changed necessarily, but maybe they've set up more plays for him to go aggressive and put in some positions, because obviously he's not really necessarily suited to sit in a place as an anchor, and I was actually looking through stats. He was something like 27% attempts on CT side entries, so even statistically it seems kind of a shift from his positions to go a little bit more on the aggressive and try to make more use of his skill set, which is obviously kind of running around and headshotting people, and that's maybe simplifying it a little bit, but he is just not the type of a player who would be sitting around and waiting just for people to come into his crosshair. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, you can see what he does on T side, right? Like you kind of sometimes hope, similarly to what it is with mobs on G2, like that he wouldn't get put in these positions where like you cannot peek, you cannot go for an aggressive play, you cannot like just run around, be more of a rotator, right? So it seemed like they were trying to set him up more for success, even in positions where you don't necessarily expect that a lot from players. And I mean, it worked, right? He had couple of really great games. I mean, in the phase 1, he was the difference maker, for example, when ZywOo had a very quiet series. So props for that. I feel like it was probably a pretty big reason why they did so well in this tournament.
I was gonna say you were talking earlier about how Vitality were playing before the break and it not being very confidence inspiring or anything like that. I remember watching their games, and to me, Spinks also really stood out because his lurks were just completely ineffective. It felt like he was playing like happy 2015 style lurks sometimes, where he was left alone, he did nothing in the late round, or he was coming in super late connector in a 2v4 or something, and it was useless. I feel like he had a little more impact here, but yeah, Flames was also a massive difference maker. I think just whatever they did between those two players during during the lead up to this to change around their game plan to try and focus more on that. I mean, it clearly worked, but also just the fact that Spinks wasn't completely absent in some of these late rounds and actually was more active, I think made a big difference too.
What's your take on the well, I'm going to give you an opinion, Prof, and you can tell me what you think about it. How do you sound of that? Apex, it felt to me with the performance as well as the performance, I think, because Nuki was great and Inferno, I think he was great as well. He really wanted this. Against Saw as well. What do you make of the late renaissance of Mr. Apex?
I hope ESL like drug tested him after this. Like, this is an insane improvement in performance, right? But no, it's kind of it's almost a too nice of a storyline. He wanted this so much that he just individually performed so much better than he did at any point during, I don't know, last year. I don't think he had a better tournament than this. And with the stakes and with the prestige of the tournament, it makes it just so much better. Even it's not like he demolished Bet Boom Dacha or something. He made it count in Cologne, right? So I don't know. I was impressed by his individual level for an IGL, or not even an IGL. He just had a bunch of impactful rounds, like multi kills, helping out retakes and stuff like that. That if you don't have that, you probably don't win this game. Like everything we said about ZywOo and Spinks and Flames, but the game was so close. They needed every player to deliver to this degree to lift the title in the end.
Yeah, like Nuke, he had a lot of. He was probably the win condition on Nuke, I would say. Like that flank that he had coming around backside of lobby and getting that multi kill. I think that's the kills that set up the ZywOo clutch. With that, because JL had gotten 2 or 3 kills within that round. I'm pretty sure got the squeaky kill. Then he gets another one from Hart. Then he's going into A site. And that round's pretty much done unless Apex makes that type of a play. So, yeah, I think there's so many moments throughout this series. The one that I think is probably the most unfortunate, and based off what you touched on before, Striker, the getting to the 4th map and then it being a little bit of a blowout, was not necessarily the scoreline, but how Vitality were able to abuse Navi to get that scoreline, which was just banana. Go banana, throw all of our nades. Like, obviously not that simple, but their game plan was quite clear that they wanted to harass Banana. That was it. And they were able to do that very successfully. So I guess that would be the biggest takeaway if I'm Bladed and Co. is, fuck, our Banana just got solved. Would that be a fair
I don't think I've seen a team get abused in Banana the way that Navi did in that final in a very, very long time. Like, to the degree that they were just getting run over every single round in conditions, I have not seen that in a long time at this level.
Saw against G2 in the group stage. Honestly, that was kind of it. But yeah, that was pretty. But at the same time, I don't know if you want to speak more about Vitality, but I think the fact that despite Bit playing like shit in the start of the series, even this Inferno game, 11-2 half, they still fought back. Their resilience is impressive, and they showed it already multiple times. They showed it at the major by being blown out on maps and still winning series. The EWC blowout against MOUZ and then winning that and winning the whole tournament. I think that's a huge factor and something that they definitely, I don't think they had this when Simple was on the team, especially this international roster. This type of resilience, no matter who plays bad and what kind of throws they manage to, conjure, it just doesn't matter. They're still like a fundamentally solid team in the next round or the next map, which is really good.
Yeah, the bounce back was something that we'd spoken regarding Navi before, right? With that 13-1 loss to MOUZ at EWC on Dust 2, and then turning it around in the follow-up, and then I guess blowing MOUZ out on the next 2. The scorelines, I don't remember them exactly, but yeah, I think the mental of the team is very good. I did feel like
they felt like they were going to win this one.
I think they were still believing. In the second half of Inferno, they were still believing. I don't think they'd given up hope, but they definitely could have won this series. Like I think that this is probably where we go with the next little leap up of the discussion, because we could sit here and discuss all the rounds and the details of that until the cows come home. But yesterday, the new HLTV rankings come out. Vitality take the #1 spot. It makes sense. Navi are #2. But what is the status quo? Does anybody think anything has really shifted, or do we still think we're in a period where there's 4 to 5, 6? You can make an argument about teams who can win any given Sunday. Do you think that some of the pack has elevated themselves from the rest? Do you think some of the pack has fallen off? What's the general consensus or thoughts on that?
I don't know if I'd say there's like 4 to 6 teams. I think there's no real #1 right now, but I'd say Vitality and Navi are like top 2 in contention for that. But I think the other teams aren't really like, I don't know, G2 feels like they could win an event, but just not a fluke event. It's still like a honeymoon phase where they're still winning things off firepower. Because if you saw the way that they were playing, it's not like they were tactically ahead. Their T sides didn't look super good.
They were dog shit in the playoffs.
The Mirage was horrible.
They were terrible.
And I don't think they can consistently do that. So as much as I think their players are playing really well, I don't think that you can say that they're like within the like a guaranteed title contender in terms of consistency.
Is Spirit completely out of the convo?
I don't know if that's the question though. Spirit, it's hard to say that they're completely out of the convo because they're so good, but the way that they played at this event, man, was just depressing. Like I was saying that I hadn't seen Spirit play this poorly ever. Like this roster has never ever played as lost as they did in this game. The number of weird individual duels they were taking in their series, like you were saying, some of the post plants they had as well on Ancient and throughout some of the games, they had, I think I remember around where it was like a 5v5, 5v4 maybe. They had a player who'd made it onto B site on T side on Ancient, and they had all of B, and then they just each one by one took duels across. Like the B guy didn't even die first. It was like one guy died mid, then a guy died lurking A, then a guy died at B ramp, and then the B guy died. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? It was just like, it was such a mess. And it was rounds like that or similar rounds to that happened repeatedly and consistently. And it just, yeah, I don't know. Like I listened to some of the last confirmed where you guys were talking about whether there's changes coming or not, but I don't know. It's so hard to judge because the way they were playing looked like a team that's dead. But I can't imagine that they swap out a player right now, right before the major qualifier.
I mean, we also have to take into account, like, this was IEM Cologne, but Bedboom Dacha is coming up, which is the #1 priority for Spirit. So for them, this is just a little warm-up hiccup event on the way to the big title.
I think the Spirit bounce back is one that needs to happen with immediate effect if they don't want to leave the conversation. I would put MOUZ based off of their semi-final performance with NAVI in the bubble. Because I don't want to say I was a doubter. I was a let's wait and see ya. I don't know if that's a fair term, but I didn't want to get hype on the MOUZ train until they'd actually broken through on the stage. Yeah. And I think the G2 game comes with caveats because they'd beaten the G2 core in Chengdu, right? So that was like, okay, well, they've already done that. So they're doing it again, which is great. Big thumbs up. Good stuff. But the competitive match against Navi that you could see, even with the interview with Blade after the Navi win against MOUZ, he was like, yeah, that was a fucking tough game. I don't think Blade would ever say what I just said, but that was generally the sentiment that I took away, that it was a tough game. So MOUZ for me were the closest with that pool. What G2 and FaZe showed, which is where I want to pivot to next, if everyone is cool with that.
I have a quick question. You say you'd put MOUZ in that pool, but do you really consider them broken through if they haven't won a big stage title yet? I feel like they're just before.
What they did against Navi has filled me with confidence that they can, and hopefully has filled them with confidence that they can play in that environment now. Because I think that was the biggest issue was like that series, they definitely they could have won both maps. I don't know what would have happened if it went to a third, but they were playing like a team who didn't look like they weren't meant to be there. Like, and I think that at the moment, because of this team can beat this team, but not this team, I still think we have a pretty decent set of teams for the top 5, 6. It's just hard to say about Spirit, obviously. I don't know how much I can put on the G2 series. Like, I think they played really poorly in the playoffs, but do I think that's indicative of what we'll expect from them in the future? Because they were very, very strong throughout the group stage. But I think from the results that we saw at this event, MOUZ are not far away from the other two.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Okay, so FaZe versus G2, not FaZe versus G2, or it could be FaZe versus G2. Who wins?
The grand final that was predicted unconfirmed and was completely wrong. Didn't even confirm it. Just said it would be nice. That's it.
Yeah, said it would be entertaining.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess we were wrong.
We were wrong.
We were wrong on multiple accounts, but not necessarily on this one.
We're wrong all the time. We're wrong all the time. If you're not wrong, then you're not right.
Oh, who was right about the FaZe SAW game? Raise your hand. I want to see, and if you're not Portuguese, please. I want to see all 3 people that predicted that result correctly.
Wait, me right now, or you mean
Just
the
in
people in
general,
chat?
in the world.
Oh, okay, all right. Yeah, look, I think that FaZe reverted to the FaZe that we're all worried about.
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
like big time.
Man,
and
that was a rough series to watch, to be honest.
In
bro,
some
they
ways,
couldn't even aim on the first map. I was like,
Yeah.
what are we watching?
in some ways, it would have been better to just lose to Liquid in terms of their perception.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
Then to go to the playoffs, and it was like, oh, FaZe in playoffs. This is where they activate. Oh, who are they playing? Must be some good team. No, they're playing Saw. First time on a stage. They're gonna destroy them. Absolutely get owned. Get absolutely owned.
It's also in the
just-
way they lost because they had
Yes.
the classic FaZe bullshit going on Nuke, and then they just crumbled at the end with some of Brokey's whiffs too. Man,
Wow.
that series was rough. That Nuke was rough, especially.
Yeah.
But how do you explain this? I don't know how to explain
That's
this.
what I was gonna say. Like, we've been talking about Rob's obvious, and he's the only one who's actually doing anything that entire final. Frozen had a horrible start, also completely missing on 2 of the maps, and it just how does this compute? You know, like the 2 guys that we actually thought were somewhat reliable just completely disappear in a series against Saw, and then Robs is the guy who's trying to keep them alive for a long time. It was insane to me, like the way that they just disappeared. It's like I don't understand how to even explain this, because like before, maybe we were worried a little bit about that they're just not playing off of each other enough. Their like individual plays are not working out, but this was just a disappearance from the individuals entirely. It wasn't even about how they were playing together. It's just there were attempts to play together. They were just missing everything, and sometimes just going for very weird plays all over the map. I
don't know, maybe
Jesus.
You know, Kerrigan said he's like micromanaging everyone.
Maybe you forgot to tell him to shoot.
Maybe he needs to, nano manage them, literally like hold their mouse to like fire now. Yes.
Get that headshot, Brokey.
I can't explain watching that series. Like, it was maybe some of the worst individual form I've seen those players in.
Yeah.
Like, it was, I can't put it into words. Like, they're obviously not scared of Saw. What excuse can we even make for them? What excuse would they even make for themselves?
I would have expected the Saw guys to look like that,
Yes.
Yeah.
But they didn't, so props to them. Like they played a good game. I don't want to take anything away from them, but it's weird.
Okay, so in terms of the phase that we saw throughout the group stage versus the phase that we saw in the playoffs,
I don't think, until that comeback against Liquid, I think there were still concerns.
Yes.
The Vitality series obviously made it look a little bit better because they realistically could have come away with the win. But other than that, there were still maps where you saw like, okay, this is not a good phase. This is still kind of somewhere off the mark from what we were used to seeing them even half a year ago. Just something that was clicking the whole time through. They kind of saved it, and everybody maybe got a little bit ahead of themselves when they pulled off that comeback. Is like classic FaZe, massive comeback. Like their MO kind of now they turn up in the playoffs. But I think it was obvious from the groups already that heading into the playoffs, once they meet somebody that was on a higher level, they were probably going to struggle. And that's why I said early on, like when we were talking about predictions for the playoffs, I was like, I want to see FaZe just smash Saw. If they do that, then I'll start believing again. Then I believe that they can take on Vitality in a semi. Then I said even they would win against the Vitality in the semi. But Jesus, like I didn't expect them to just flop that way.
That Anubis also honestly was in Saw's hands. They threw away some insane rounds at the end that allowed them FaZe to push it to 3. I thought it was like, okay, this is the crumble of the underdog. Had all the writings for it, but they made it through in the end. So yeah, they had everything they needed for a good playoffs run, and they didn't do it. So I feel like they're kind of where they started before this event in terms of
the same spot. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
but what do we think that reflects on internally within the team?
It's hard to say, because even in Kerrigan's interview, he said that he's doing the broadcast interview. He said that he's micromanaging, but he said that it's not something that he kind of implied it's not something he can do forever either. Like he said, my individual level is going to drop off, and it's going to burn me out.
And that's what happened as well. It was pretty bad in the groups at least.
Yeah, and you can only maintain that for so long before you burn out with the amount of work that takes as well. So it's so hard to judge where they go from here, because yeah, neither of their wins were either like convincing really, because they still had the narrow game versus Liquid in their opener, which really could have gone either way. Then Falcons is, I mean, they're not playing well right now, so I really don't think that's a super notable win. And even then, one of the maps was OT, and then you had them beating Liquid again in a game that really, like, the thing is, they could have won that. They could have won that 2-0. FaZe could have won that 2-0 if not for the nuke. Was like the 5v3 that they lost into the rampant. But
yes,
even then, the way they were playing didn't look convincing across their run, and I don't see the consistency that could be applied after this from that, even if Kerrigan's micromanaging. So how does that even convert in terms of how they're going to go from here? Because if he's micromanaging and they're still barely scraping some of these wins and they don't look individually on fire, then where are we left with FaZe?
They're playing Showdown next
online.
Yeah.
Perfect
so
for them.
in a few days, which I think that's a chance to get some confidence back, but it's also really realistic that they don't make it through and have an even worse level of confidence moving forward. Let me just take a look who they're playing.
They play Rare Adam first.
On their side,
they play Rare Adam first, but then they have the winner of Cloud9 Pain, and then they'll face one of Heroic, OG, Nip, or Amcal.
They have to make it through. They just have to make it
I mean,
through.
I think that Cloud9 game is probably going to be the make or break.
Yeah, I think so too.
That's probably the one. But still, I mean, Heroic also isn't terrible once they get a little bit up to speed. And they've already lost to an IP, so then again, maybe it's not
true.
They've already lost to an IP, so it's definitely a possibility that they lose any of these games apart from the first one. I mean, sure.
Are they in crisis?
Yes.
Yes.
I think they still are. I still don't know what they are supposed to do
Chad?
because it's like
Chad, do
different
you agree?
players. Go ahead.
I think they're in a free fall, and none of them know what the solution is.
Yeah.
I don't think they know how to fix the problems that they have. I don't think they like. It's one of these things where you go, okay, well, do we do this? Do we focus on this? Like, do we need to overhaul the game plan? Well, they just had Kerrigan call right as if they have a stand-in. That's their words. And then you had them lose to Saw, and it's not meant to be disrespectful to Saw, but it's a team that, with the way that we frame FaZe, should be eating them for breakfast on the stage environment, and their players couldn't shoot straight, which is the one thing that you talk about with your Ropses, your Brokies, your Frozens. They should just be able to outskill a lot of people, and that doesn't look good either. So everything is kind of fucked over there.
That's the weird part, though. Like, we've been talking about like they have to do something, but who did they even replace for like 6 months now? Like, for ever since they started struggling, or not 6, but whatever what it is, 4 months. Since they stopped going into finals at the EPL, right? And ever since then, it's looked like one of those situations where you just switch out one player, everybody gets some motivation back, you know, and it's just like that kind of forced reset that tends to help everybody, at least in the short term. But it's like, who do you even replace? Because I don't believe that there's an issue with Rain, for example. You know, a lot of people are calling out the Rain, but he still has. I feel like he's still on the same level that he's been for a long time. I mean, he's always going to be a bit inconsistent because of the role that he's in, but performance-wise, he's not doing badly. I don't think he's the one making some more mistakes than any of his teammates, or like or being worse in his role. What's right?
Think bigger. Think bigger.
Absolutely.
Imagine we disintegrate FaZe as they are right now. You have the 5 pieces.
Just disband them.
You have the 5 pieces, and you can put them in any team that you desire. I would send Kerrigan to Astralis,
okay,
to replace Stare. I would send Rops. I don't know. It's hard now because Vitality just won. But you could send Rops to Vitality to replace Mezzi.
Okay.
We could keep going, right? I'm just like, I don't know who. Like, someone.
Where are you sending Brokey?
Where are we sending Brokey?
Brokey to Navi for Wonderful.
Actually, not a terrible shout after the final performance, but Brokey also missed a lot.
Yeah.
I don't think.
I feel like Brokey is the type of player that would infuriate Blade. He would like try. He would make him go bald, and like not only because I feel like, I don't know. It's just like Brokey's aura is like when Blade after the game would tell him something, he would just say like yes, and then do it again the next time.
yeah.
He wouldn't like get into an argument, you know, and be like, I don't know, I'm simple, I know how to. Then like he would just say yes, and then Blade would just be like, I don't know.
Brokey also has a very big voice, and that means Ema's performance would drop because Ema's playing much better since he got a more active voice in that team. So good luck.
I just think that there's like Striker, because we've talked about this before. It's so hard to come up with a solution, right? Like because we don't even really know what the problem is. But it's not, whatever it is, it's not working. So that's FaZe. G2, however, had this amazing group stage lower bracket run. They annihilated everybody. They were just pumping everybody. Like it wasn't even close. And then they get into the playoffs against MOUZ with the hot hand. And I think the narrative or the dialogue that I was reading was like in-game leader diff, right? It was like a discussion about the T sides and their approach, and a lot of it was.
I think that's simplifying the situation a lot, though.
Oh, definitely.
Considering the lack of impact from Nico across the entire match. You know, MOUZ also was just present for one map and then disappeared as well.
What do you think about Nico's interview? Did you see it? After the game?
Yeah, I saw it.
It's
I mean,
like
he
had
basically just
seen
said
a
the other
fucking
team is just
ghost,
better
bro.
or whatever. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think I missed this. What was this?
It wasn't. He didn't actually say anything that crazy. It was
no,
kind
but
of
it was the way that he was.
The
speaking.
demeanor was kind of. I mean, you could tell that it was a shock to them that they went out this way, because they just stomped everybody on their way to the playoffs, apart from Saw, right? Like they dropped onto the lower bracket. They barely lose 5 rounds against anybody they meet, apart from that one Astralis game that they threw. And then you go into the playoffs and like somebody does that same thing to you, and you're just completely out, like disappear off the face of the planet. I mean, it clearly came as a massive shock to them because they didn't think that they would be able to disappear this way. So I think that was mainly the only thing to look at from the Nico interview. I mean, I don't even think it was crazy. It was just the way that they got destroyed was pretty much the feeling out of it. But I mean, there were obviously a lot of situations where you could tell it was an in-game leader diff. I think HooXi was calling a really good game, and then Snacks was making, if it is Snacks, I mean, who knows? Sometimes it can be like individual players as well, you know. But there were rounds on Mirage where, like, even the first couple of rounds, it was like the anti-force and then the anti-eco. What Snacks does is he active lurks mid to short alone, just getting himself into a crossfire situation with the guy in connector and up short, or in whatever you call it, whorehouse. I don't know what people started calling it now.
Oh my God, Striker, you're gonna get cancelled.
It used to be called whorehouse.
It did.
Everybody called it whorehouse.
You're gonna get
at one point.
cancelled, Striker.
Something someone's mom joke.
Yeah, exactly. And then he did that same thing against the Eco next round. He dies there, or the first gun round or something like that. He dies there. Like everybody else is on the entire opposite of the map. He's like walking up short with a Mac 10, or I don't know what he had in his hand, something like that. Just, I was like, what is the point of this strat? Like I was trying to understand what was
get the eco frags.
What was meant by that? I mean, it was also in the anti-force. You know, like he dies there, and then the entire team is on the other side of the map and just locked without any information. You know, like it was kind of crazy to me that those were the first calls that they made after the pistol round win, and then the rest of the T side was just kind of a flop after it got into the gun rounds. So it just feels crazy to me, because like the whole idea of the Snacks move was like, okay, we don't need a tactician, we just need a guy who will let our individuals shine, right? But then there are some calls that are kind of like 4-1 defaulty, like not even default, is just like a 4-1 split and stuff like that. That's not really utilizing your individuals in any sort of a way anyway. And then they're also not performing, so you're just not getting anything out of it anyway. It just, I didn't make a lot of sense out of it.
I agree with you for the T side of Mirage. That looked awful, but the Dust 2 game, honestly, they could have had a way bigger lead in the first half on the T side. If you go back and watch that like streak of rounds that MOUZ had like partway through the half, part of that is because Nico had 2 like dead to right kills in mid on 2 different rounds where there was somebody rotating from B and he just completely whiffed. And I think in one of those rounds it was Jimmy, and Jimmy killed Nico, and then he went and got like a 3K off catwalk to shut down A. There's like that round. There's another round where he also got destroyed by someone peeking from CT. So those 2 rounds basically let MOUZ come back into the first half, and it honestly could have been like a 10-2 or even bigger blowout in the first half if not for that. The second half was just, I don't
MOUZ
even know.
got owned it long, didn't he?
MOUZ got owned it long, but he barely got a chance to play. That's the thing. And that's what I was going to say next, is that watching MOUZ anchor long as a CT position is just, I hate watching that happen so much, because G2's making him sit there on long for the entire round, especially after that first half that he had. He was like 18 and something, 18 and 6.
Yeah.
And then they made him sit long for the entire CT side while everybody else is just getting destroyed. So when you have a player on fire and you're just not having him active at all, it feels like such a waste. And MOUZ's skill set could be so much better used than that.
Yeah, but the thing is, that you would. It feels like they. I get what you're saying overall. I guess for the balance of the team, they have sacrifice on either side, right? And having a strong player playing long, I don't hate that idea because long can be a skillful position to either win the early skirmish if a team is doing it all in. It does become 50-50, but MOUZ is pretty good in those environments. And then you are going to get challenged with 1v1 fights, like for potential lurks out late, right? Or late pops. And that's the type of stuff that I think a player of his caliber can deal with. Like Mirage A Anchor is a position that is the same type of thing.
That's not really so much an anchor position as well, you know, like you can be quite active from that.
Well, you
have
can
a lot of
assist
different
other parts of the map.
play.
Yeah.
But the only thing you can do from the long position is go for the push, or you give it up and you float back so that you're helping when they're coming out cat, right?
Or you have guys supporting from A with flashes and you're just sitting pit, right? I mean, but it's very passive.
But I looked at I look at it and I go, I understand completely where you're coming from because he's such a great like round opener and taking those fights, but the only other place that the way you would make the trade-off in my mind, if you were going to do that, is you would make him the mid to B player, right? You would make Hunter either the B player or the long anchor, or maybe just make Snacks the long bitch, right? That's what FaZe do. They have Carrigan as the long guy. I'm pretty sure Alexi plays the long guy for Navi.
I'd rather that than Snacks anchoring B because
Snacks plays B.
Snacks plays B, and he got 3 kills in that half, by the way, and they were all that 1-5-7 round.
Yeah. Yeah, they only got 2 rounds on that CT half. So it's G2's CT side, but it was pretty miserable. It's surprising in that series that MOUZ made the change, like going into that, and they swapped Brolin and Exertion's positions on the CT side, but they kept them the same on the T side. They changed that around. So that was, like, I guess that's because they got blown out by Vitality when they played in the group 12-0 or whatever it was. But
I mean, it kind of makes sense also on Dust 2 if you think about it to maybe put MOUZ on B instead, because that's where you have a little bit more agency, like especially if you're going for like mid pushes and things like that, you have a little bit more movement than as the long anchor, you know, who just sits in a position for the entire time. You know, you can go for like upper and lower pushes at the same time, you know, for some more control. You have a lot more different positions you can use on B, you know,
but we're having this conversation. We're having this conversation, and the 2 teams in the grand final have their in-game leaders play some of the most key positions on certain maps. Like, for example, Apex on Dust 2 plays the A rotator role. Apex and Alexi.
Are we sending an
Nuke.
official apology to Apex now after winning this tournament and playing well?
I think
we don't need to apologize because now he was fragging in these roles. So if he just was always fragging in these roles,
it'll be fine.
We would no one would criticize him.
Apex and Alexi both play Yard on Nuke. Emma plays main, Spinks plays main.
They just played very differently to a lot of the other teams, though. Like, because if you look at how Nico plays it, you know, he's always going to look for. Well, actually, Apex also plays that way, but he also dies there a lot when he goes for like red pushes and things like that, you know. But they just approach the map a little bit differently. They just they don't play around them as if it's a star position, you know, like as other teams do.
Someone in the chat said that Snacks in a post-match interview said that he wanted to try new things on the T side that they didn't really practice.
Seems like a bad idea.
That seemed like
But they haven't played that many maps together, isn't it? Only like 27 maps or something in total together at a certain, like they haven't played. So you're not going off a lot of data in this situation, but what was that? Probably their 3rd Dust 2? I'm having a look right now. I can't imagine it's been a lot of Dust 2.
Played it a little bit.
Yes, their 3rd Dust 2. That's it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And the 2 times that they played it, I think they started on the CT side, whereas this time they had to start on the T side. I'm pretty sure. I
mean, Dust 2 wasn't a problem, though. Like, they had a good T side. Not the T side, anyway.
Yeah, but that's what's strange, is because the first 2 times they played at Striker, they started on the CT side and they steamrolled. They won the pistol, the conversions, they had the momentum. This time round, it's something that Yanko was talking about as well. Like, if there was going to be pushback against G2, like not winning all the pistols or not getting like all the clutches going their way, what was it going to look like?
But they still did win all the pistols.
But we saw a bit of like tilt creep in when there was pushback, when they were losing rounds that they probably like that, and that's a bit more classic G2, right? We saw those frustrations starting to build up a little bit, and mentally, I would
from MOUZ as well.
Yeah, MOUZ like smashing the desk, right? Like, but he did like he was in a clutch situation, was he?
Yeah, it was kind of somewhat of a bad miss. Yeah.
Yeah, so like, but that's again, that's going to happen in those environments.
Yeah.
I don't look at G2 as one of the mentally strong teams, to be completely honest, with anybody playing at home. So that's not like it's outside of the norm. But in terms of what we saw from them from the group, and then what we saw from them in the playoffs, Prof, we were just talking about FaZe, saying that they're in crisis. It's still early days for G2. What do you think this means for their journey? Is this like signs of, oh, this is how bad it can be? Or maybe the other events were a bit of a, the honeymoon and now it's over? What's your surmise of G2?
I'm leaving this to Striker. I feel like he has a strong opinion.
Oh, okay.
I don't really have a strong opinion. I mean, I'm not usually the guy who calls for changes like 2 months into the lineup. I don't know. Early on, I definitely had more of faith in Snacks than other people. That's fading a little bit, but then again, it's mostly about this one match, which just felt very off. And it wasn't just him. It was far from just him where there were problems. So I don't know. I mean, is it just time? I don't have a strong opinion about this actually at all.
No, I mean,
you don't have to have a strong opinion.
Thoughts are if you get an IGL, that's gonna let the stars play openly and work around that, and then the stars don't play well. Like it's not
that's
probably
gonna
not gonna
be
work.
A problem. Yeah,
it's probably not gonna work. It doesn't matter. What are we talking about here? Obviously, you need to kind of facilitate that to some degree, regardless of like where the power balance is in the team. I don't know. I still think overall they have sick players that can win a lot of games. Are they going to win tournaments? I don't know. We didn't see that. We didn't necessarily expect that instantly from this team, but I think they have the off chance to make a run, and as Nohte kind of described at the beginning of this conversation,
they're in a better position than FaZe.
They can low key fluke a major, if that's the thing. Because we're talking, when we're talking about these teams, we're putting it in the context of the season. Cologne is over, so the next things are the RMR and the major. These are two things that are important. Everything else is kind of like neither here nor there. Filler. I think for FaZe, they're definitely like a big question mark how they would be a major contender, considering like who they're losing to. Pretty much everyone from the top teams, right? And on G2 sides, they can beat pretty decent teams. They didn't beat like some world beaters aside from Spirit. That's their big scalp from EWC. The stuff at Cologne was okay, but the way they played in those games, you would feel like they can beat anyone on a given day. But again, MOUZ kind of put a dent into that theory to some degree. So I think they're okay. They're still a pretty new team. I want to keep watching them to get a better understanding. And that's kind of it. I think they're still pretty solid, pretty dangerous. I don't think they should be super scared about anything. But the question is how they feel after this loss, and maybe it's a different vibe.
I think
like it's
at
just
least
too early to judge them too. They've only played 3 events really. It's not a big sample size, and you're also, especially nowadays when teams are relying a lot on like learning from officials and seeing how teams counter them. I feel like just having 3 events in the bag, and one of them being blast groups, which I mean, it's not a huge event by any means, and a lot of teams use it as practice for Cologne openly. I think they deserve a couple more events to actually show something. I think right now, PETA's tweet is kind of just coming to mind about that whole like, initial honeymoon, and then they're just going to not be playing well. And I kind of want to see whether that actually comes true or not, because I think now is kind of the next month and a half to 2 months is when they're actually going to be able to either dispel that narrative or they're going to just prove it right. And I don't think it's going to go either way particularly. Like, I don't think it's going to go any other way than one of those 2 directions.
Okay.
I do think that usually with kind of new teams, or like when teams change lineups, you can tell pretty early what their ceiling is. And, from those couple of tournaments, like everybody says, yeah, we need time and blah, blah, blah. But I mean, history has shown that it's kind of like in the 3 to 4 month period where you've already shown your peak. I think like this version of Navi is actually one of the very few examples of the opposite, where somebody does peak a year into the lineup, almost, let's say for them, when they won the major, was something like 8, 9 months into the lineup. Well, I mean, in the meantime, they also changed Simple, so maybe that got reset a little bit. But in any case, like we saw the peak from G2 as very high. It can be very high from the run that they did in the lower bracket. Also the win against Spirit in EWC. I mean, them also making it to the final. They also destroyed VP on the way. It's not like VP is some great team that we can use as a benchmark or anything like that, but they just didn't even give them a chance. You know, they have these games clearly in them where they can just steamroll opponents now. So it is possible for them to have that ceiling on a game basis and even, you know, on a stage basis, but there's still maybe some concerns in playoffs, or if they can kind of deliver against the best teams, because they were historically struggling a lot even against Navi, and that was clear at EWC again, where that, like, there was just kind of a clash of play styles where they didn't really know what to do with that. On the opposite side, and this MOUZ match is kind of like the first real concern that we would ever have for this team. So I don't think there's reason to be particularly concerned about where the team is headed at the moment. I think they've shown enough to say that, like, yes, this constellation can work if the individuals are on, which has kind of been the case for G2 in a historic context as well. I mean, as long as, you know, Nico and Modesty are on, and then they can deliver big tournaments. Now they have even an extra level on top of that with mobs just being able to steamroll from like an entry failure position, you know. So you just have like another level to that now. So I don't think, yeah, I think they're fine. I think we have plenty of time to see if there's any sort of a concern, but I wouldn't be too worried at the moment.
Okay. All right. Well, look, let's take an ad break and we'll come back and we'll keep talking about Cologne, and then we'll get into all the other bits and bobs. But before we go to the ad break, everybody in chat, it's Lucas's birthday today. So wish him a happy birthday. We'll go to the ad break. I want everybody throughout the ad break to say happy birthday to Lucas. Let's be right back.
The world is changing quickly. Shoot it.
The world is changing, but one thing remains the same: victories with 1xBet.
Sell in-game items at the best prices in just a couple of clicks. We are the biggest instant sell service for in-game items like Counter-Strike 2, Dota 2, and Rust. Easy selling process and instant withdrawal of funds to the most popular payment methods. More than 140,000 deals and 50,000 active sellers every month. Use promo code HLTV5 and get a 5% bonus on the sale of your skins. Skin Place. Sell items now.
Since the dawn of CSGO, we have been there. Observers of all that competition can reveal. Elation, fear, triumph, and heartache reach out from every frame. From the small studios and conference rooms to the epic arenas, the feeling is still the same. We live and breathe this game. This was CSGO Through the Lens. Buy now at hltv.org/shop.
All right, we're back in business. All right, so we've spoken about FaZe, we've spoken about G2, we spoke about Navi, we spoke about Vitality. We're doing pretty good so far, guys. We're working through the playoffs.
Good job.
Is there somebody we haven't? I mean, we haven't spoken about.
We
Saul,
touched on Saw and we touched on MOUZ. Now, I came up with these. I guess I grouped the teams like this for a reason. Let me remember why I grouped the teams like this. I think I put it in Discord earlier today. So yeah, what I had was grand final equals Vitality plus Navi conversation. We did that. Wow. FaZe, G2 plus FaZe, playoffs versus groups, right? We did that. How they looked in the group stage versus how they looked in the playoffs. And then in this one, I like this because we like talking about the woke mind virus, all things American politics, as well as false flags. We're going to end up in the algorithm with Alex Jones very shortly. Breakthrough or false flag, MOUZ plus Saw.
Want to be
So,
fake flag?
Sorry?
It's a fake flag or reference.
No, it's not got
false,
to do
false
with...
flag.
It's not
What's
got
a
to...
false flag?
It's a false flag operation. It's
yeah.
This is the reference.
It's
Well,
not
Tony,
something
do you want to
not
talk
kind of
about
like
kind of like a red herring, right? Similar.
Yeah,
vibe.
that's kind of
Okay,
that
okay.
is the whatever.
I
Do we
only know
want to
fake
talk about
flagging.
false flags? Because it's
I
probably
only
not.
know fake flagging, which another HLTV means.
After this, Prof, you should go to YouTube and look up some of the biggest false flags in history. All right, take a little
Thank
bit
you.
of a look, and maybe you'll learn a thing or two. But regarding Saw, regarding MOUZ, I don't really care which one we start. Actually, no, let's start with Saw. Fantastic performance from them. Great for Portuguese Counter-Strike. Loved the Muterus clutch. Amazing stuff. Beautiful work. Absolutely owned him, made him look silly. I thought he played the last 2 kills extremely well, and a little tap in there for good measure. Good stuff to Saw. They played very solid CS. It's hard to fuck with the caliber of Counter-Strike they were playing as a team. And that seems to be the prevailing conversation for your Navi Vitality, and then I guess Saw and MOUZ to a lesser extent, whereas the other teams based a bit more on the individuals. HooXi had a pretty good fucking series, I thought. He was, and Astralis, right?
Ours too, yeah.
Yeah.
And those are the 2 names, I guess, who are the rifling output. I learned from Muterus and Roman that HooXi has like no emotion. He's like, I don't know if they were saying he was dead inside, but he's the same everywhere.
He doesn't seem like that type of a player. If you look at him in game, to be fair, he's pretty spicy. He likes to go for some duels and stuff. Like, it's kind of he's if there's a crazy man in that team, it's probably him.
Yes, which is why it was surprising that they said that about the young gentleman. But I suppose the question, and this is to the room, do we think this should be the new expectation for Saw to be like on the cusp of playoffs, if not in playoffs? Do we think that this was just I don't want to say one-off, obviously, because they had their breakthrough earlier in the year with the major stuff. But what do we think this means for the future of Saw? And there's probably no Portuguese people watching, guys, so you can say whatever you want.
I don't think
it's hard to see.
Yeah, you go, Prof.
If they're doing this, they had their run earlier in the year. It's hard to see them not be in like top 20 contention. Contention to make serious contention to make the major, stuff like this. I think that's
they're 10th in the world. They went up 9 spots.
Yeah, I mean, obviously after a run like this, but I don't expect them to be top 10 in the world. I think between 10 and 20 is where I expect them to be, and competing against all of these international rosters that are out there, and then see from there. I think that's kind of a thing. Obviously, they had an uptick with Barry joining. They had a decent run earlier in the year. They had decent runs past years as well, but they made changes. So there's obviously something good in this lineup, but it's hard to be super consistent as if you're not a giga strong team. So if people expect them to now just like win everything on tier 2, that I don't think that's reasonable to expect. But just getting to the playoffs and beating a team like FaZe in the playoffs, I think that's like massive props to them, regardless of FaZe's limitations right now.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think the other thing is I see a lot of people, especially after that post came out about the snap tap users or whatever, that Saw are snap tap abusers and they're not going to do it again. First of all, they already had a run at the major. On top of that, it's not like they were winning by winning like every head-to-head individual duel. What really stood out during this run was that they were like tactically playing well together, and to just put that all on snap tap is a bit of a it just doesn't feel fair to them, because it was a legit run in that sense. Barry has helped this team along a lot. That being said, I think I wouldn't call it a one-off like you said, or that you were asking about, but I don't put them as a consistent playoff team or a team that would make like these kind of big event playoffs super consistently. The thing that was kind of telling to me was that after they lost to Vitality, I don't remember who it was. It might have been HooXi or someone had an interview on the broadcast and they said something like, Vitality was the first team that actually prepared for us. I'm like, well, if you think other teams aren't going to prepare for you now after that, if that's all it takes to destroy you the way Vitality did, then I mean, I don't see that as any confidence in their own consistency to necessarily make it this kind of deep run over and over and over.
I was just looking for that little that
it's in the live
right?
post.
Yeah,
I think I would kind of liken them to an Eternal Fire in that they will have these peaks in them every now and again, and they can beat these teams that are punching above their weight effectively. but I don't see them doing it consistently as well, especially because of the way that they got blown out. Even kind of historically, when they've played in some of these matches, you know, like they do have these. They've had several series. Even in the group stage, they had a series against Navi where they won the first map and then they just got destroyed on the next two. You know, when they were playing FaZe, they got the first game to overtime, then got destroyed on map 2. You know, kind of the same thing happened now against Vitality. They just got blown apart. So they have a ceiling, but it seems like their floor against the top teams is also very low. At the same time, you know, if things don't go their way, so it doesn't seem like they are the most consistent team to be able to take on these top dogs on a day-to-day basis, you know. But I mean, the quality of the individuals is definitely there. I mean, even Mutt and Roman, they do have these games where they will take over, you know, or where they will have a couple of these plays that
big impact,
that just make that slight bit of extra difference. So it's not like they're holding the team back. And I think the core of Jerks and Arsdos as the riflers is very strong. And Story is kind of this supportive opera that doesn't seem to make a lot of difference, but every now and again he will have these games against the better teams as well. So there's definitely things to work with there. You know, it's not like I expect this to be some sort of a world-beating team, but I do think that they are legit victories, you know, that they've picked up along the ways here in Cologne and even back at the major where they were pretty close to making it even further. For them to be, you know, they will get these invites now until the end of the year, probably even heading into next year into like a Katowice and stuff like that. I would expect them to maybe make one playoff at the big event down the line, a couple of playoffs, or get close to that, but maybe not, you know, get anywhere near contending for titles.
I think that's a fair assessment. I would put them in a similar category with the Eternal Fire conversation, but I would start throwing other teams in there as well, right? Like the Mongols, for example. Right?
Yeah.
There's a couple of these teams
that's a good one too.
who are in like striking distance of making a dent or just making playoffs or can contend on a macro level with on certain maps. I wouldn't say over the whole map pool, right? Obviously maps that they are either specialists at or play a lot of. So I think that they are, I liked what you were saying, Prof, regarding like top 10 to 20, something along those lines. But yeah, this is going to be a not any given Sunday type of thing, right? Because I don't see them winning championships, but I can see them making dents against big teams or making the playoff appearance if they're on a hot streak, right? If they're playing a strong tournament, if everyone's looking pretty good. So, okay. Yeah, everyone seems to be in similar agreement about Saw. What about Mal?
Message in chat says if Muterus and Roman can still compete at Cologne and make semis, it's time for Sponge to return to competition.
I'm fucked now that Snapchat.
Number one,
man, it's all over for me.
Number one Australian on Face It.
It's all over for me, mate. I gotta get back in the games. Yeah, we'll get into the games this week. I think I've set a task for Harry and all the other lads. They have to play within themselves to get their elo up to a point where I'm not losing more elo than we can win when we play matches.
Yeah,
otherwise, right. It ain't worth it.
So you're never playing with them again.
They might be able to do it. I have faith. Harry and Rush and Janny and Henry and the gang, they can make it happen. How do we feel regarding MOUZ? I've already given my piece. I think that they've broken through the threshold now, and now that I have a lot more faith that they can do it in the stage environments. Does anybody have any strong opinions about this?
Yeah, I honestly don't have much to add to what we kind of spoke about them a lot through the other games that they played.
Yeah.
So good performance.
Good performance from MOUZ. Good job, MOUZ. Playing in your facility in Hamburg with the casters.
I think that part.
I love that part. That's my favorite part.
Overblown.
Come on,
I swear to God.
Get on board.
I swear to God.
I can't believe that's a storyline at all. Honestly,
like I'm surprised they're pushing it so hard. That was my first thing. You know, like I was like, okay, they referenced it once, but then it came again after they won. Then it came again in preparation for the next game, and then it came again. Like, okay, it worked. Like whatever we did worked. To be honest, I was from the first place. I was the guy who was saying that it's a bit. This whole narrative that they are just stage chokers is a little over the top, because the fact that how many times they lost to FaZe in those games, and it just seemed like a matchup that they couldn't get over regardless of where they played them. So a lot of the time they just ran into a team that they just cannot beat, and that was at a time when FaZe was just beating everybody as well. So I thought that was always a little bit overplayed in the first place, and I think it was kind of obvious that even if they will have moments, you know, where they kind of disappear, even in early into the G2 game on Dust 2, Xerxon took a very long time to get into it, and he was kind of like one of the biggest defenders in previous arena games, you know, where he just wasn't making the same plays happen. You know, he maybe went for them anyway, but it just didn't work, you know. So you could still see that start from them, but then they finally kind of got over it fairly quickly. And then in the Navi game, I think that's where they kind of came into their own. I think the G2 game probably did a lot to their confidence, especially with how convincing it was. Because then, you know, like, who can say, like, if you're destroying G2 like this in a stage game, you know, who can then tell you, like, okay, you cannot do it against a different team again, you know. So I do think that this did a lot for their confidence, as you were saying earlier, taking 2 top 5 teams to, you know, beating 1 top 5 team, taking the world's best team to such a close result. That's great to do that on the stage, especially in Cologne, you know, where the pressure is even higher. So I would say that I would also see that in their future, that maybe they're going to get closer to that title finally.
Okay. No, you got anything you want to add about MOUZ?
No, I think what you said kind of hit the nail on the head in terms of they're very contentious. I would put them slightly below Navi and Vitality in the conversation we were having earlier about actually winning titles, because until they actually take a big stage title in front of an arena, I just can't put them in that same category, because to me that's just a different hurdle that you have to overcome in the end. But I do think that they've taken a huge step towards that in the way that they played in front of the crowd in their games here.
My only pushback to that would be they know what it takes to win. It's just they didn't know what it takes to win on a stage. And I guess you could even still make that argument because it's only G2, the team that they've beaten.
I mean, I think they know what it takes, but they just can't
doing
do
it
sometimes.
doing it is different though.
Oh no,
knowing what it takes and actually doing it is different.
But I do have one. Yeah, sorry, I do have one slight concern for them, which is that there doesn't seem to be one guy that they can consistently rely on. It's
feels
always
like Torji, doesn't it?
Recently, it's been more
Jimmy
of that.
had some rough clutches.
Jimmy had generally a pretty bad playoffs. Even both series, he wasn't that great. I mean, even in group stage, he was pretty mid. And I mean, this just happens with MOUZ consistently across tournaments. It's like Jimmy, I know this because like I've tried to try to pick like fantasy players from MOUZ every time, and it's like, and it is always a fucking toss up. It is a fucking toss up, like which one of them is gonna turn up on the tournament. You know, like it was for 3 tournaments in a row was Xerxon, and then I was like, okay, that's the guy for them now. And then he just disappears the next tournament. Jimmy takes over for that one, or Torji and Jimmy kind of combine to take over for that one, you know. And it's been kind of like this hot potato of who gets to carry a game. And that can be a strong suit, but it can also be a weakness where you just don't know who you can rely on in games. Yeah. To win you, to get you over the line. So like, where do you put your resources in games if you don't know which of the 3 is your consistent star, you know, like where can you know what the output you're going to be getting, you know, when you're preparing for games and game plans, and who's going to be able to have the output for that, you know. So from that perspective, as much as it's good that they have 3 different players who can step up, and sometimes they even combine all at the same time, and that's where you can see this title contender MOUZ, you know, but it doesn't happen a lot.
Dream dead?
I think we're good.
People put an F. Is it dead, Lucas? Oh, why did people put F then?
There was like some disconnects and something weird happening.
Oh, okay. I thought it was Jova.
Yeah,
you reminded me about Jimmy. Now I'm sad. He had a really tough game. He looked out of sorts. Poor Jimmy,
I think
man.
Xerxon in the quarterfinal looked pretty horrible in some rounds and still got 3Ks somehow. That's why I think like what I said earlier, they know what to do, but doing it in some of these rounds looked really affected by the pressure.
The USP in ladder room. Yeah, and then the molly comes in, and then Torji has no aim, and then he gets the AK, and then Xerxon doesn't trade.
That bit round was that looks like a matchmaking round. That's a matchmaker. It's like, oh my god, he swung wide with a USP, panic, crouch spray, can't follow the guy, die, everything falls apart. Then you flame your teammates. Because why would you do anything else?
W.
They're like, what are you doing? Why aren't you splitting B? I don't know, or something.
Tough.
Anyway, what are the odds?
We'll move on. Let's get into the 1x bed I'm thinking of sleeping. The 1x.
You want to get
bets.
into 1x bet with us?
Yeah. What are the odds with 1x bet? Here we go. We're gonna
Honestly, there's opportunity for a skit there. I feel like
something in bed.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we can work on it. Yeah, I like it. I like beds. All right, Prof. What are we doing this week?
This is Striker's idea from yesterday morning in the taxi to the airport. He said, "What if we do? What are the odds? Will Astralis sign HooXi?" I think that's where we started, but we kind of ended up on this. Will Astralis sign a new IGL before Shanghai? This is what we went for.
Striker, tell us, what do you know? You know something. What do you know?
I mean, there's been some rumors. I don't know if I can believe them at the moment. I think it's more about classic Astralis kind of like looking at their options rather than anything else. You know, obviously there's HooXi on the market. That's why I kind of brought it up. And it is an obvious place to go. And I mean, if I don't think anybody believes so much that Astralis had this master plan in the first place, you know, of okay, Device always wanted to be the in-game leader of Device, wanted to do it for a long time, you know, to extend the longevity of his career. I think if there's an opportunity to improve the lineup, and with somebody who knows how to win, who's shown that in the past and knows how to work with some of these pieces as well. I mean, obviously he's played with Yabi before, and I think he's kind of gotten his reputation up from the time in G2, regardless of how that ended. So I think there's a decent chance that it will happen. I don't know if I would necessarily say it before Shanghai, but maybe if Shanghai doesn't work out or if they're bad at Shanghai, I think by the end of the year, I think was the framing I was thinking about more.
Do you want to we can change it?
I was thinking more because we have only like 2 weeks before the roster lock for Shanghai, and I would imagine not a lot of teams will do any crazy changes now and 3 months ahead of the major. You know, it would be the only time to do it realistically. I mean, if you want to take a risk, then this would be the time to do it because you still have 2 months before the RMR. You have some time. You have some of these tournaments like EPL, you know, that you can get into and then just use them for boot camp purposes, and then just some other tournaments along the way. They have the fall final as well, so they would have some tournaments to get up to speed if they really wanted to pull the plug on this. So I feel like there's a world where they do it before the major, but I think before the end of the year is where we would get to maybe higher numbers.
My question is, why would they sign a new IGL? The Astralis PR machine told me that Device wants to IGL and it's his future and it's going to be the permanent move.
I think that they need a new coach.
You think that's all that's going to do it, though?
I don't know if that's what's going to solve it, but I think they need someone who's going to be more of an authority figure, who's going to bring a better either understanding or approach to the game, because I think that the way that they're playing the game is the problem. I think that Ancient looks the best for them because they can call the most direct when they play in general. I think that they have strong pieces in the places, but if here's the thing I have a qualm with. If we're going to bring HooXi in for Stare, which is the likely conversation that we're having, then
do you think it will be Stare, or do you think there's a world where it could be a bro?
Well,
I know position-wise, it would be more Stare, but
yeah, but this is where the issue is. You already have Stown and Yabi in the map control positions, like on the CT side of Ancient. Like they're already taking space, right? And if there's a disconnect in the mid rounds, then isn't that on them? Or is there not enough protocols in place? Is there not a decision tree that's in place?
It could be a system,
is it too much free fall?
Yeah, right.
Like
it could be.
Well, so I don't know. Look, we need to put a percentage on this. Are we going to do end of the year, or are we going to do?
We can do end of the year. Let's do end of the year.
I think that's
end of the year
more somewhere down the line.
Well, then because there's a real chance they bottle the major, right? And if they bottle the major, then they'll definitely make a change.
Is that too obvious then?
It's not too obvious because we might be wrong.
Doesn't mean it's in the IGL change, you know.
Okay.
And they might turn it around.
Okay, let's do before the end of the year. I mean, that's the end of the season anyway, right? That's where we decide, or that's where we put it all together.
Someone said make MSL active again. I saw a thing on his Instagram. He's starting a business.
Okay.
He's starting a business of some variety. I don't know what it is, but he said he's been putting a lot of time in that. So shout out to MSL one time. I am going to say that. See, here's the thing. With the Astralis that I've seen, I'm not confident in the way that they're approaching the game. I had a positive outlook on it coming together in the beginning. I thought it had strong pieces. I like Bro in the anchor positions. I think Stair is a very talented player. I think we know the biggest issue, I guess, is the consistent output in big games or important matches from Stown, because I think we do get it delivered from Yabby. I'm gonna keep a little bit of faith. I'm gonna keep a little bit of faith, and I'm gonna say 30%.
Ooh, I thought you were gonna go like 49%.
No, I'm going 30%. So that's kind of low.
I'm gonna give it a 45.
Oh.
If it was before Shanghai, I would have put it much lower, but end of the year, I think it's much higher.
People saying 30% is high.
I think I'm gonna go 20%.
What the?
Wow.
What do you know?
I just have faith.
Okay.
I have faith in Deve.
Okay.
All right. And Striker, the man who has the information but can't tell us?
I don't have that. To be fair, like I don't really have information that there's like there would be anything happening or that there's been anything happening, but there's been at least some sort of a back and forth at some point. I don't know when this was or how recent this is, but it's not like it's completely out of the question. Let's just say I heard that.
Problem is HooXi is going to Falcons. That's what I say.
That's imagine, but let's talk about this, right? Like let's say, let's say HooXi just gets an opportunity.
Hold up a second.
Let's say I'm just talking like absolutely theoretical.
Okay.
No, I didn't say. I don't actually know any of this. I swear to God, I don't know anything. But I've said this before to somebody when I was like talking about this possibility. Imagine what HooXi does is like, or he just gets an offer from Falcons, but obviously, like if he wanted to make a choice, he would prefer Astralis. But if they don't give him an offer before Falcons do, like let's say he doesn't. Astralis tell HooXi like we will not get you into the team before the Shanghai Major. Falcons would go, but we would get you into the team before the Shanghai Major. You get these pieces, like turn the ship around. Does Astralis get enough FOMO that they will just give HooXi a contract right away because they don't want him to? They don't want to miss out on that opportunity and see him go to Falcons where he's going to be locked for the next 2 years.
A lot of good Danish in-game leaders.
That's that's fair, but how many of them would actually switch?
I don't know. What if FaZe goes miserably wrong?
Patty is free.
You think Kerrigan's going back to Astralis though?
I don't think so.
I doubt it.
But
I would also be surprised about that.
Someone said Cadian in chat. Imagine Cadian going to play with Stown and
Yeah, a lot of the Danish IGLs are great, but I don't know, like if Falcons get rid of Snappy, it's like would Astralis really go that way as well? That's another one of those. So I'm just saying there's enough there that I feel like I would put it above 50%, and that's just because there's enough already that there might be a move down the line. So I'll give it. I said above, Lucas. So I'm just thinking.
Whoa!
I'll give it. I'll give it 60%.
60%.
60%.
Damn.
I will say, I think for Stair would be the wrong move. I think Stair is a good enough player, and he's shown the ability to adjust that he can play other positions or roles.
Yeah,
I actually have. He's one of the few players I have confidence in who can just kind of mold toward whatever.
So then it has to be Bro in your mind.
I guess so.
Because they spend money on Stair and on Stown and Yabby.
I mean, they would never. It's impossible. Like, imagine that they would make that move for Stown. Like, they literally get rid of their best rifler. Like it's obviously maybe not the best in certain situations, but like they just tag their firepower, right? So
I also have to say this. People keep saying, "Oh, they paid so much for these players." It's like, so what? It's like. That can't be the argument forever. That can't be the argument forever. Like, bro, they paid 600,000 for Skulls. Skulls just forever on the team. Like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
It's
Bro, if you pay 2K for a PC and it stops working, you're not going to keep the PC. So
exactly. I thought you were like, gonna oppose me, but this is true.
What is this?
This is true.
No, that's fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. Well, I guess it depends on how bad it goes, right? And which pieces are.
First, you try to fix it, but then if replacing the RAM doesn't fix it, you just throw it out.
We had to do some tech issues on Harry's computer today. The motherfucker couldn't jump.
That's interesting.
Not even joking. We'll get into that soon. All right. 1xBet, what are the odds? Will Astralis sign a new in-game leader before the end of the year? You get to have your say at home on Twitter and Instagram or X. So yeah.
While we at this, I was promised by Dimitri that he was going to make a graphic, but I didn't see it. So maybe he did, maybe he didn't. The last one we did was for ZywOo to have a 1.20 or higher ratings in the Cologne playoffs. Obviously went through, and you guys at home predicted this. So congrats. There's some funds added.
What are the odds we've done so far? Honestly, like if you look through the stats, this is like 90% chance it happens, man.
Did we lean that way? I forgot what we did.
We were kind of in a 50-50ish. It was a decent prediction.
It was a good bet. All right.
Yeah, striker. It was 90% chance to happen. Didn't even put 90%.
I don't know how.
Didn't
much
even put 90% himself.
What did I do? Tell me what I did. I don't remember, but it was definitely high.
I'm not.
I think I said like 80%.
You should know what you did.
I think I said like 80% because I remember making this argument because I went through the stats and I'm like, it happened like once in the last 10 tournaments that he didn't hit that.
All right, boys. Lucas, roll the bumper. Let's get into the woke mind virus conversation. Be right back. Lucas did count me down. I just got caught a little bit off guard because I was looking for the link to the post that Valve put out. So I'm still hunting for that right now. But last night there was an update. Happened probably about 11:30 or 11:45 p.m. something along those lines. If you're in Europe, so that's CEST because we've still got summertime. An update coming out now. We will quickly go over the contents of the update. There's a couple of little things in there. One to do with the jump throw sound making noise. I don't know.
Grunt.
Yeah,
when I saw the headline on HLTV, I was so confused. What is going on?
What do you call the sound?
It is. I just woke up. It was very confusing. I'm like, what kind of?
They call it a grunt, right?
Yeah,
it is actually in the
the biggest one outside of the jump bind and the snap tap being disabled, disallowed, whatever, is obviously the little bit about VACnet. Initial testing of VACnet 3.0 has begun on a limited set of matches. If you believe your match was incorrectly cancelled, email us. But that's interesting to see what VACnet 3.0 has in store, because obviously there's been quite an issue with cheating that's been discussed ever since the release of CS2 when people have been able to play against the matchmaking stuff. So that's going to be a really big potential change. We just have to keep our eyes and ears out for that. That is, I guess, one of the keys of this little update. But the main stuff is clearly to do with the banning of snap tap and whatnot. Now I'll get up the post and I'll read it in full because some of our audio only listeners, maybe they didn't read it themselves. So this would be a nice little help for them regarding the information. Okay. Headline: sidestepping skill. Very, very good, Valve. I like what you did there. Counter-Strike is constantly evolving. From art to maps to inventive plays and even player input, the CS community shapes the game. Scripting and automating player commands has always been contentious, but over the years, some forms of scripting, e.g. jump throws, have gained acceptance, as they enable plays that wouldn't otherwise be possible. In fact, jump throws became such an important part of the game that we've done the work to make them reliable without any special scripting or binds, i.e. by jumping and quickly throwing a grenade. Developing one's coordination and reaction time has always been key to mastering Counter-Strike. Recently, some hardware features have blurred the line between manual input and automation, so we've decided to draw a clear line on what is or isn't acceptable in Counter-Strike. We are no longer going to allow automation via scripting or hardware that circumvent these core skills, and moving forward, and initially exclusive on Valve official servers, players suspected of automating multiple player actions from a single game input may be kicked from their match. To prevent accidental infractions, in-game binds that include more than one movement and / or attack actions will no longer work, e.g. null binds and jump throw binds. If you have a keyboard that includes an input automation feature, e.g. snap tap mode, be sure to disable the feature before you join a match in order to avoid any interruption to your matches. Now, if you're just joining us and you haven't been keeping up with the drama, since snap tap was released on the Razer Huntsman V3 keyboard or whatever it was essentially SOCD, which is these binds to do with counter strafing. WooTing then put out a poll and asked their users if they would like the same thing to be implemented. the users voted yes. So WooTing implemented that onto their gaming keyboard profiles. They were also working on something called Rappy Snappy, which in a way that I'm not technically smart enough to understand is technically different from SnapTap.
The way that it differs, just for kind of like the technical side, is so SnapTap literally like takes over the previous key. Like when you hold down A and then you press D, it just takes over the D from the A, and then you let go of D. It takes Prof. You just whatever, man. I saw the little
Heard
smile.
D too many times, and you put a smile on his face.
D twice, and
yeah.
Oh my god,
double Ds.
And then the way that the Rappy Snappy thing differs is it prioritizes whichever is pressed down further. So it's not just taking over one or the other, but it's just whatever is pressed more will be the one that takes over, that takes prioritization. And
however, if you have a WooTing keyboard and you plan on using Rappy Snappy, you need to disable it because you still will be kicked from the server.
Yeah, no, that is still disallowed. Yeah.
Yes, I was troubleshooting those things today because I was using my WooTing today just to see, what would happen. And I was in like a Valve Deathmatch server, and I played the Deathmatch server, didn't get kicked for using Rappy Snappy. Played a casual server, didn't get kicked, and then we played like a competitive game, and I got kicked during the competitive game for using it. So definitely a no-go. But overall, this highly contentious conversation that's been going on for the last, let's say, month, right? It's probably been a month. There was some testing of it previously, but it's really heated up in the Twitter sphere and on the forums and everything like that in recent times. There's people who are keeping track of players, even some players who aren't even using it at the moment are being touted as using it. And the one, not department, the best group to make this decision has made this decision, the game developer. That's perfect. Because as we had seen, TOs were just kind of letting it fly at the time. And I think that was the best thing to do, as opposed to them banning it. Let daddy make the decision, let the god upstairs have to actually sit down and take a look at this and decide if that's something that they want in their game or not. And they made the call. So I think this is the best possible outcome that we could have had based off of what we were talking on the live show when they put in like a string of code or something that was to do with SnapTap detection or whatever it was. I thought they were going to, wait a little bit longer.
We were so wrong on that one. I was that caught me off guard, man. I really, really got surprised that.
But maybe they got enough data. Maybe they got enough data quickly enough.
It could also be that they just understood what it does, right? And I mean, it makes sense that they would be against this, considering it is basically circumventing a core skill inside the game, and it is automating some things for you, right? That it's automating multiple inputs, and it's significant enough, it's like, okay, jump throws, it is just about being a bit more consistent with throwing smoke that would be otherwise very, very difficult to hit. But I mean, you can hit perfect counter strafes. It is just a skill, like you can do that with smokes as well, I guess, but it's just, it seemed like a significant step in the wrong direction in that sense. So as I said, like I said it on Twitter, I understand it, because it seemed like a big enough, it irked them enough that they made such a quick change or a quick response to it. Honestly, big props for that, because I did not see it coming. I figured they were just going to let it play out until the end of the year and then, gather some data and then figure out what to do with it after that. Right? Exactly. I mean, that's what they've been doing for a long time with things like this, right? They love their data. They love to figure out what kind of impact things are having. But it really just does seem that it is just on its own merits. It is something that they're fundamentally against. So that's why this decision came so strongly, because I mean they're even putting in more preventive measures even for things that are similar to that, even if they're doing it mainly to avoid players getting kicked for things that aren't necessarily caused just by SnapTap. Well,
that's obviously that conversation is the next component of this, right? But I guess overall with the SnapTap conversation, is probably one that we should just focus on in the first place, because they do talk about jump throw binds in this, but this was targeted at SnapTap, which has kind of then shone the light on. Yes, Prof?
I just wanted to add just this whole, the conversation that we had in Cologne during the show, and just in general regarding this and everything that has been out. There's a lot of information, some may be semi-correct, some fully correct. Honestly, we don't know how these people actually monitor who's been using it and how they figure this out. It seems to be fairly correct overall, but based on that, there is no correlation between using SnapTap and being better at the game. Like this statistically there is no proof to this. Like obviously
there are examples on both sides. Let's just say
what I was saying before at that time is like obviously it should make you better in the long run when you get used to it and everything. Like it simply is better. It is faster, but it doesn't mean that at the moment it is making players better. Yeah. So that's why I was thinking that Valve wasn't going to do anything right now, that they're just going to wait, take some time on it. But as I said, I don't think the idea of it is good or in the spirit of the game, and I would want it to not exist. But I did not think Valve would find such an easy solution to it so fast. And to be honest, there's still some weird stuff happening. I don't know if you saw the Reddit thread on people using like a Logitech K120 keyboard, which is like a pretty,
like 50 years old or something.
Yeah, the most basic keyboard you can buy in a store, and apparently is triggering people to get kicked because it has some automation, because it's like a membrane keyboard that's super bad, that they needed to add some like smart features into it to like counteract the bad hardware essentially. So people are getting kicked for just a bad keyboard.
Isn't it crazy though and I know nothing about the technical side, so when I say this, it comes with full ignorance. But it's so wild to me that Valve can implement this knowing if you're pressing like that type of key and it's like having overlapping inputs or whatever the fuck. But they can't work out that some fucking dickhead in matchmaking is scout headshotting 5 people through the wall with 5 different shots in 3 seconds. Like, I can't quite comprehend that.
Right.
Like, you've solved this problem. How come I'm still like out there getting cheated against? Maybe this has got something to do with the VACnet 3.0, maybe?
But that's the thing that's absurd too, though, is that it's not like you need some AI to tell you that killing 5 people in the first 5 seconds of the round is like, oh my God, it might not be cheats, Like a scout headshot from spawn to spawn in 5 seconds doesn't need some AI crazy trained algorithm to tell you that's cheating, But I was gonna say on your point of the Rappy Snappy thing, I feel like that's something that's going to be interesting to monitor, because you said that it worked in DM, it worked in casual, but then not in comp.
It probably didn't play enough, right? So I think it's looking for a certain amount of inputs before it kicks me.
Right. Okay.
That's what happened to me as well when I was testing it. Yeah, it was fairly fast, but it wasn't just like first kind of strafe that it kicked me instantly.
Right. So that's the other interesting thing, though, is that the false positives that are happening right now, I wonder how Valve are actually doing that on the back end to monitor it, because when you see these posts that have come out after these events of people saying like, oh, these players are using it based on this data, if it's similar data for Valve that's showing that, then those posts aren't necessarily accurate. And we've seen that with like Nico counted into the post when he didn't use it. So you have these kind of circumstances where players are saying they're not using it, but then the data is showing it is. So that overlap is probably playing into the same thing where Valve is detecting some false positives, and the actual way to like iron out who's using it and who isn't fully fleshed out. Sure. I think the interesting part is how quickly Valve reacted as well, because I didn't expect them to come out this quickly and implement a hardline stance on it. I do think that I'm really happy they did, because the conversation around the whole null binds and these movement things, when it became such a big topic, was jump binds are allowed and they let you do multiple actions at once. So Valve should either permit them all or not permit them at all. And they made a decision. So I think on that end, at least, I'm glad that they picked one thing and made that a full
stance
rule set. Yeah, exactly. They picked a stance, they made that across the board, and people can't really use that argument anymore, because now those jump binds aren't allowed anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it is curious from the wording of that statement whether that was necessarily because they wanted to make a hardline stance across the board, or if it's just because of the detection thing. Because, I mean, from what this, if you bring back the statement, what it says exactly, just give me a second, because I also need to bring it up to quote it properly. To prevent accidental infractions, in-game binds that include more than one movement and or attack action will no longer work. So, I mean, that first quantifier, to prevent accidental infractions, just makes it seem to me like they just wanted to disable it so that there aren't being a lot of matches disrupted, because it would also count as something that would get detected by the auto kick system. So maybe it is just because they don't have a system advanced enough to actually tell whether it is snap tap or something that's coming from binds, that would kick you from the game. So it seems something relatively basic rather than some sophisticated system that would actually tell you like, okay, you're using one of those, or like you're using something that does exactly that as hardware, not in scripts. So it's curious that they said it that way, because it doesn't look like a stance across the board. And I mean, historically, they haven't necessarily been so against jump throw binds as we were talking about, so that's a curious part of it.
Yeah, and that is probably we can flip flop between the conversations, but the point regarding them removing the jump throw binds ability is the bit that is a little bit more frustrating to me, and not because in terms of the of the use case of the jump throw bind, but more why did they allow it for so long, right? Like, and I think that when they introduced the grunting, because when we tested the game in the office, talking to the devs about jump throw binds was something that we brought up, right? And one of the devs from one day to the next went and implemented a bind for jump throws, because they didn't want us to use a lot of the console. They wanted us to try not to use a lot of the console. They didn't want us to use certain commands. Like, I was using clear decals, and they were like, look, we've done a lot to improve the visibility. Can you not use clear decals, et cetera, et cetera? And so we had this discussion with them at some point regarding jump throw binds. And I even remember saying to them, yeah, but like there's some players who have like W, like, and it even evolved to the point where I've seen players who had like S-based W jump throw binds, right? So that there was more than just the standard jump throw bind. So then when CS2 comes out, they have the grunt to basically take that place, and it has a certain window of time of which you can throw that. Now, for anybody who's tried it, it's very easy to throw standard smokes with jump throws because of what that allows. Just standing smokes with it is if you fuck it up, you've got to be doing something wrong, right? Like maybe you're using a really sensitive mouse wheel or something, right? Like, and but regardless, doing the standard jump throws, I don't think should be the people at home or the pros concerned, because we have seen a bit of back and forth today over Twitter. Maybe not back and forth. I don't think that's the best way to summarize, but we've seen different opinions on either side of the fence from a lot of different players. And I think that I was involved in the initial conversation regarding jump binds back in 2015, right? I was still playing then, and it was something that my team wanted to use. And I know Fnatic and co were strongly against it. But the rationale for wanting to use it back then was to have this consistent option that would allow for
deeper tactical gameplay.
Yes, because it was consistent, right? Like, you could throw it every time. It was going to allow you to do things that you couldn't do otherwise, at least consistently, right? And that is something that Valve have noted here in this little piece they put out, saying that jump throw binds are such a big part of the game now that they have added this ability to do it within this reason. It's the W jump throws, and I saw Stiko put a video out a little bit earlier, him doing it consistently in a position, and that's a kind of a tricky one with the way that smoke bounces, I think. But I think that there's going to be certain W jump throw smokes that have a small window for error that are either going to have lineups completely changed, or players aren't going to be able to do anymore because of the risk of it not landing consistently.
Yeah.
Because the key of having these things based on a key on the keyboard for it to happen, bang, every single time is why it's being done. Like round openers with jump throw smokes, with step bro smokes, haha, on like Mirage and Ancient, right? Like those from Spawn are very important to do. And I was fiddling around with them a bit today. I was playing just on Ancient, trying to get the W timing down. But I also investigated, this is the other side of this conversation, where it gets to the point where I am going to say that they really should just have it on a bind, because people will find a way to have it bound that will circumvent all of this.
I've already seen a few comments about people who found workarounds.
Yeah, I mean, there are already workarounds out there for already, even though Valve thought they disabled all of these, So
I've got a workaround right now on the WooTing keyboard, and they can't detect it.
I saw someone post that too.
Yeah, connecting the two buttons, right?
Yeah, so at the different actuation points within the key, if you just hit it fast, because the key is going to get boop, boop, it's just going to happen instantly. So the way that it's been bound, Rushley showed me this, that if I just hit the key fast, it will go through 3 different actions, right? So the first one being forward, the second one being jump, and the third one being the minus attack of the release. You just press it and bang, it's fucking done. I basically have a W jump throw bind on my keyboard. Like already, it's there. It's done.
There's
Just
also
to
a way to
understand.
do it through aliases as well, just for anybody else. So,
Okay.
like,
Yeah,
they're
there's
not actually
literally-
found a way to shut it down completely either.
Yeah, there are literally already like auto exec series of commands that work around whatever Valve did to remove these multiple actions. So the jump throw bind still exists at the moment. They're just slightly different. People somehow always find a way around this, even though it's been like 10 times that people have done this.
Yeah. What were you going to go with, Prof?
My question was just to kind of establish opinions. Chad is against this, but are you if it could be completely neutralized, like all the workarounds, would you still be against banning the binds and just having it, in
I guess
game?
This is the conversation, right? Do we like the meta of how Counter-Strike is being played now?
Because my kind of devil's advocate opinion is it doesn't really matter what the options are, as long as like we'll just figure out different options. Like, wow, you can't throw this one smoke. Like, is this just because we threw this smoke before doesn't mean we have to throw it forever? Like, I don't think that plays any real significance in Counter-Strike. Like, of course, people should push all the options and like elevate the game and find new variations and faster smokes and all of these things. But in case one of these options is not available, and maybe it is available with 95% accuracy and there's some skill to it, I'm fine with that option. What I don't like is this other people still having workarounds for it, because then it didn't solve anything.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
And we're just like saying like, when your mom leaves, it's like, don't play video games, but you're gonna play video games. She's not there. She's not gonna stop you from playing video games. Like, what kind of stupid rule is this? Like, okay, if you think this is accomplishing something, great. I'll just turn it off before you come back, and good.
Yeah, I think you said that I'm against it, right? Like, I don't know if I am against it. I just think that there are going to be workarounds for it.
Yeah, we just need to be consistent about it, is effectively what you're saying.
So, and there were workarounds made for it in the past as well. Because like I said, this conversation has happened a couple of times in the better part of the last 9 years, right? 2015 was the first time. Then when CS2 first came out, it was because Valve didn't want it to happen in the early stages of CS2, I'm pretty sure. But then people still had binds anyway. So it's like, when I stand back and I look at it for the current meta of the way that the pros are playing it, this is why I think you get like Apex's tweet and you get like Alesia's tweet, for example, is the way that the game is currently being played right now. If they want to continue to do the things that they're doing, there's going to have to be a certain amount of time spent to see if they can consistently do these smokes, right? Because there's going to be some of them that I don't think they're going to be able to consistently do. Yeah. This is not just the standard jump throw variety. This is the moving ones, like the crouching, holding, W and D as you're next to the trash can or whatever, like, or whichever it is. There's certain ones that are going to be a little bit more finicky that they're probably not going to be able to hit all the time. And then that's going to have an impact on the way that the game is approached for them in the short term. Because Prof's right, like, they will just come up with a new way to be able to do these things. So
Sticko's in chat, and he said, I cannot think of a smoke which would be inconsistent after this update. If it is inconsistent, it is because of release timing, not the actual jump throw timing. And if that is the case, it was already missable before this update. So I don't know if that's
timing.
Yeah, I guess he means that 300 millisecond window or whatever, but I feel like
I think it means more like when you're moving forward, like at what point do you release? Rather than have it. But I think there are obviously some smokes that are so close to where they're supposed to land. Like, there is just a difference of some pixels where you move just slightly further than you're supposed to, in the step jump throw, that you just miss it, right? And then like what's the margin of error that you're allowed in certain smokes? But then again, like, should these smokes exist in the first place, that are so precise that you can only do it by automation? It's also that's a conversation that I'm not sure I have have an answer for, because realistically, I mean, without these smokes, the game would still be played at an extremely advanced level. You know, people would still find different smokes. Maybe that would do something very similar. Maybe certain situations, certain things would not maybe be possible in the same way, but it would be fairly niche situations. And, you know, for those, who knows if there are some other workarounds to do it differently. People just found it in this way because it was the easiest way to do it.
Yeah.
And then so, like, who is to say that if it was completely disabled, people would just not find a different way to do the same thing just consistently without all these crazy, like, next level, you know, commands to be able to do it for you effectively, you know? So, I mean, it all kind of falls under the same conversation with how much you're allowed to have the commands do things for you, how much of that removes the skill. And I think, I mean, I am probably more on the purist side of the discussion where, yeah, I mean, just same thing was with the where Robs was doing the commands to put him exact, like to move his crosshair exactly a certain amount for it to be exactly in the right place for like the little dust to smoke in middle, right, from these spawns. So like all these things, you know, it would, like, the further we go with that, the crazier it gets if we keep allowing this sort of stuff to happen. And like, who's to say that there's not going to be some alias that that's going to do like 2 steps left, 1 step, well, 2 steps forward, 1 step left jump throw, you know, like for you to just sit in a corner and then it will do everything else for you, you know? Like, I'm not I'm not a big fan of where that can lead if you don't keep a lid on that.
I think as a whole, I'm glad that they actually clamped down and made this something that you can't do at all. I think getting rid of these alias binds and these repeat movement binds and whatnot is good. I think in the end, I would like there to just be a single jump throw key. Like, it doesn't have to be a W jump throw key. If they just had that, like they did, as Chad was saying, in the original beta that they played or whatever, that would be ideal, because then you're still opening up the window for, you know, people to perfect the W jump throw on their own, because then you at least have one, you're still pressing 2 to 3 keys. And then you have the jump throw bind, which is at least, like, I think for a lot of people as well, it's muscle memory after years of playing the game. Because even yesterday I was playing in like a retake server and I instinctively went to press my jump throw and nothing happened. And I was like, okay, well, this is going to take a lot of getting used to, but also it's the fact that you now need to press 3 to 4 buttons to do like a W jump throw. And regardless, that's going to create inconsistency. I think having that one key at least still creates the fact that you're doing the action on your own.
Which is why I'm pretty sure when we were at Pro League and I was talking about this, I even like said that there was like a jump throw key in the game, because like that's what they added when we were there for the test, right? Yeah. But when I was playing today, anything that I'm doing, if I'm doing like an ancient like doors smoke from CT spawn, those are the type of lineups where you aim at this point and then you release once you get to this point. But the ones that I had a little bit of a tougher time with and had to sit there and kind of grind out was making sure that on ancient for the window smoke, that my like W press and my release were like, you know, I had to do it quite a few times to make sure, okay, this is the point in which I want it, right? Because that for me, it was just, okay, I spawn in, I aim here, I press this key, bang, I'm fucking leaving spawn, right? And the way I'm looking at those things is how they play into the current meta now. But the conversation that Prof's bringing up is about things can change or they can do things differently is bang on as well. I think it's probably more of a holistic discussion of, you know, is it something that we want or don't want? And Valve obviously don't want, but it returns to my point of, I wish that they were a little bit more hardline on this at the release of CS2 once they added this thing. And then because they allowed people to make it possible again, but then we still end up in the same conversation. Workarounds are going to happen anyway. So are the workarounds going to be policed, right? Like what do we consider? Well, yeah.
That was my biggest concern about this. I mean, that was also a big part of the reason why TOs would never actually do anything about it, because, I mean, first of all, for scripts, I mean, you have a decent level of oversight, because, I mean, these are things that are on the tournament PCs. You can check what execs players are using, what's in their config and all that
configs,
stuff.
Yep.
Same thing to some degree, at least the same thing as with the keyboards that you know about. But what if somebody comes up with a keyboard that you don't know about that does this? And like, then you have to find out after the fact, sometimes from a demo that will tell you, okay, this was way too many perfect counter strafes for that to be human. And then are you going to cancel matches over that? Are you going to take that for for like, are you going to take that for granted that information is actually true? It just puts you in a lot of awkward situations where you will have to change results after the fact, and that's not something you want. It's very difficult to detect this before it happens if somebody who wants to use it is smart enough about it. So from that perspective, I mean, it's kind of impossible to police it, and it's absolutely impossible to police it online, where especially if you're talking about some of these null binds and stuff like that, which if they keep working, then there's absolutely no way where you can check what people have in their configs and stuff like that, unless it's somehow like part of the anti-cheat. And even then, like, I'm sure there's ways you can hide that, and there's ways you can have it in a keyboard that like nobody knows. It's just like some custom keyboard. Somebody just makes a specific program for it that does the same thing, but that same keyboard doesn't do it for everybody else. It's just like something that you do for yourself. So there are a lot of intricacies that prevented tournament organizers from doing this, and so Valve stepping in and having something in the game that detects it is important. Problem is, at the moment, I don't think tournament organizers have any access to this detection. Second of all, it seems to be faulty, as we've seen so far. It doesn't seem to be perfect, and the way that they've kind of disabled all of these other things at the same time does suggest that it is not very sophisticated, that it is, on some level, just detecting whether two things are being done at the same time, like too close to each other for it to be human on a consistent basis. So like from that perspective, I have a hard time seeing tournament organizers being able to police it without something much more sophisticated than that being accessible to them. So in terms of a response, I'm kind of surprised that Blast were so quick to follow suit, because they have said they will ban SnapTap from Showdown already, which is starting tomorrow. So I have a hard time just seeing this being policed properly.
Well, so I assumed that ESL/Faceit would follow through with this, because if it can be detected for the keyboards or the null binds in the way that it's apparently meant to be able to be detected, I imagine they'll push that. They probably have.
I think the problem is also that, like, okay, we saw this Reddit guy trying to work backwards through it, right? But then again, like, what if a player just disables it for certain points where it would basically be normal until they get into fights, or until they can get into fights, So for half of the round, they're just not going to have it on because they don't need it. That until they reach a certain area where they know they can meet an opponent, they will then turn it on for a fight and then turn it back off. And this could be as easy as pressing one thing, on the keyboard, like if you wanted to. So it wouldn't even be that big of a problem for them to hide it from that detection system, at least the one that we've seen so far. So that it would have to be something more advanced than that to be able to tell. So it's kind of it's not an easy solution for ESL, and especially knowing Michal Slavinsky and some of these guys who are working behind the scenes on things like this, who are trying to come up with ways to make sure that there are no ways to go around it, or at least there are as few as possible, and then they can actually police it. Because if something is not enforceable, then it might as well not be in the rules, because it's just it doesn't, you cannot then make any decisions if you find out some like, it's impossible for you to find out if something's happening then. So if from their side, I wouldn't be surprised that they took their time with it and figured out some systems to be able to detect it, first of all, preferably before, like, as it happens rather than after it happens, because then you get into these weird situations.
I'm just going back and having a read of Alicia's tweets from earlier in the day about the changes, and I'm sure this is the thing, and this is what a lot of people like to do. They like to get worked up into a frenzy, and they also like to put a lot into these things that happen and make it their life for a short period of time. But for a pro player whose life it actually is, right, they're going to be involved in this conversation a whole lot more. So Alicia's, which was 21 hours ago, which is not that long from the point of the update, right? It happened like 11:45.
It was really, I remember a tweet coming out like within 30 minutes or something.
So just wanted to get the time, because I think that's important for people to keep in mind. Are you kidding? Removing jump binds, man, lol. Removing snap tap, sure, and that functionality, functionally whatever, but removing a quality of life that you even had in the game when CS2 was in beta is so lame. You guys said it yourself. You added the functionality in the game intentionally, add a bind, which I think goes back to what you were saying, Note, like in the sense of, well, if they've added like this window, and that when you're reading all the comments to these pro players who were against it, the comments are, it's so fucking easy, man. Like, I'll hit it. If it's so easy, right, and everybody should be able to do it, is it really a skill then? Like just a standard jump throw? And
I
then
mean,
if
there's obviously it's not
there
like
is a
pro
threshold.
Skill. There is a threshold. There is a skill to it, but it's not like, you know, there's a reasonable margin of error that anybody relatively new to the game can learn it quite fast. You know, it's not an
noobs
advanced
are going to have a
skill.
hard time with it, but I think that's kind of the point, right? In the sense that
noobs had fucking walk, jump, throw binds in their config anyway?
I don't. But I think that's also part of the pushback from Valve, is because they want everybody to be kind of playing the same game, right? So I think from that perspective of, especially the people in these replies to Elige being like, it's so easy, I think they're kind of doing themselves a disservice with that, because it's like, well, if it is so easy, then maybe
then why are you complaining about it? Yeah.
Then we should just have a bind for it, right? Like
I mean, that from that perspective, I feel that it's obvious that it is it's not exactly, you can't call it unfair, because obviously anybody would have access to these commands if they wanted to, you know, but it's more like having a level playing field in general, like without having to do things to your game to be able to perform it at the same level, you know. For example, like there's graphical things you can do to see a little bit better and stuff like that, but a lot of it is subjective. A lot of it is about the person. But if it is about like, you have to know these 10 commands to be able to throw this smoke properly, you know, that's kind of like pushing the boundary on what you're expecting other people to do. You know, like if you see a guy see this see this smoke being thrown, you know, and they're like, okay, so how do they throw it, what happens exactly, and they try to replicate it, they would be like, impossible, because it is so down to the last kind of detail, down to the last pixel. Because it is automated, then it is basically unreplicable without having those commands, you know. And then that ceases to be a skill. That is literally just knowing the right command to be able to throw something, you know. And that's it. Maybe I am too much of a purist in that, but that feels like it's going too far in the wrong direction, you know.
But again, like with a lot of the things that we've discussed, the idea that there will be workarounds, the idea that this is meant to be pretty
that
easy,
is obviously
easy threshold to master, like that's for me, like we're leading ourselves down a path with this conversation. If we all acknowledge that, then what is the issue with the bind? Like if it was in the game,
more of a precedent kind of thing that goes together with the snappy tappy.
Well, that's the only reason there's any focus, right?
Yeah,
it's because
it would never happen without this. Like it wasn't a part of the discussion in the community or anywhere. It just became an added on discussion to the snap tap discussion. And they're like,
because of automation. Right?
Yeah, and then they were like, okay, if we're doing this, technically this is kind of falling under the same thing, so we're gonna do both. And and that's it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think just to kind of wrap it, it is. I think another argument people are saying like, oh, it's just before the closed qualifiers. There's always fucking something going on. So I hate this.
I mean, it is very close, to be fair. 2 days before major qualifiers is kind of crazy.
I hate it, but it's always going to be next to something. It's going to be the major. It's going to be a fucking Cologne. It's going to be the RMR. It's going to be something.
I mean, if anything, it is important that they clamp down on it just as the qualifiers start. Otherwise, they kind of have to run with it until the major is over, because then you would have like, you know,
they don't have to do anything.
People start not have to, but people would start a qualifying, like a road to the major on certain equipment or whatever, and then they would have to change during it, you know. And who knows how much this equipment actually did have an impact on performance or whatever it is, you know. So like, just end the discussion early, you know, like ended with it before the qualification process starts.
The conversation was only about snap tap. It wasn't about the binds,
of course, I'm
right?
not talking about binds, I'm talking about snap tap.
But the pushback from a lot of the teams who are about to play this is about the binds, not about snap tap.
Yeah, but one goes with the other, right? Yeah.
That's something that was being referenced when we were talking about this. I think Prof brought up that he spoke to some players and they said those players were having a hard time and they didn't like it, so they changed back, right? Like the idea with snap tap, I think snap tap probably offered more again to the noobs than it did to the pros. Like I think it probably helped people with something that they either didn't really understand or weren't very good at. I think that's probably where you would have got your most benefit out of that product, as opposed to the high end. And I can see why people don't like the idea of it, right? Like I still think actuation and rapid trigger, which is what the WooTing has, still feels really fucking crisp. So if anybody, I'm not, this isn't a plug or anything to buy a fucking WooTing, but if you want to get the best you can out of a keyboard, still having a keyboard with actuation point that you can set, which is a Razer keyboard. I think SteelSeries has it. The WooTing definitely has it, and then this rapid trigger thing, which the Razer has and the WooTing has, but I don't think any of the other keyboards have. That makes that actually, like, you can feel it. Like, it's still still quite tactile.
I mean, it's even kind of crazy because if you set it high enough or like to the absolute extreme setting, you're literally fat fingering everything all the time because it's just it is so sensitive that you're constantly pressing something that you don't want, you know. So it's kind of crazy how
you've got to pick and choose.
Yeah.
Someone said SteelSeries has it. I thought SteelSeries had the
Rob said
actuation
first.
Did they have rapid trigger? I guess I didn't do my research very correctly. I knew that they had the actuation point. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Was more the actuation. Rapid trigger is the other way, right? Like when you depress something.
I think so. This is why I need Rush around here to kind of answer those questions for me.
Yeah, I mean, actuation is like how high it is recognizing, and then rapid trigger is when it releases. You know, at what point does a key release?
Here's my question to the room, and this is leaning again back away from the snap tap conversation and more into the jump binds or lack thereof conversation. In any given match, I'm talking like the major qualifiers that we have going on now, the what's going to start tomorrow, or even the Blast Showdown that's going to start tomorrow as well. How many missed smokes do you guys think that we're going to be?
There's going to be a lot, surely.
I think there's going to be a lot.
There's going to be a lot, even just because of what Nohte was saying, you know, like just getting into a game and having the muscle memory of like having like still thinking that you have jump throw, you know, like you don't get that out of your head in 2 days, even if you play quite a lot. Like there's still going to be situations where you just, hello, okay, everybody just disappeared from me for 1 second on the thing. So even that's going to happen sometimes, where just people will jump and nothing will happen because they don't, or like they will just sit in a place, nothing will happen until they realize, you know, they don't have a jump throw anymore. So even these sort of small situations, but it's bound to happen. You know, people have just. What is going on, Lucas? It's just like things are.
You're getting DDoSed by the SnapTap community.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree, though. I think we will just see a lot of missmokes for honestly quite a while. Even Rops has even said today's practice just from muscle memory was crazy amount missed, and I think even that, like when you're going to do a jump throw, even in spawn, if you're doing like the Mirage window smokes, instinct now is just to press one button or max 2 buttons. It's the amount of difference and the amount of time it takes to actually relearn that entire process, both in terms of muscle memory, but also just in your instinct when you're going to throw it. That takes a lot of time. So if you think 2 days is going to be enough, there's going to be so many miss smokes in these qualifiers.
I mean, the people have to relearn them, right? I mean, I was just I was just at a certain player's place and I was taking my keyboard back, who I borrowed it to, and he was like, I was supposed to go to the gym, but now I have to relearn all the smokes, you know. So
Stiko was in here before, and I think he was having a conversation, or maybe not a conversation, maybe a disagreement. I'm not sure how we'd frame it, but there was I think Stiko's opinion, and I don't want to talk for him, so if he isn't here, he could say this one way or another, is that he thinks that the W jump throw smokes can be consistent. Now, Rops is in here as well, and let's pit them against one another.
It's just,
we use Twitch chat.
Let's get it on a server and then just have them throw smokes.
Well, I can set up a refrag right now. I'll say I can put them in the spawn and I can say throw this smoke and we'll see if they can do it. But I would love to put people to the test with that, because I think that
it'll be great content, at least.
Twists and Bubsky, I think, had some interesting takes, and I mean interesting in like a reasonable standpoint. Like Twists put everything is fine, actually goodbye jump binds. That was a bit of the clickbaity one, where they're throwing a couple of the second one he threw actually a little bit more technically, he's moving while throwing it.
Valve replied to that one and said, like, thumbs up, by the way, of course.
Yeah, I saw that. But then the next one that he followed up with, yes, smokes that have more room for error are going to be fine, but certain smokes that require a consistent movement are not going to always hit without a bind. And that is probably the thing that is going to have the biggest impact, right? Is the adjustment period for players and teams of understanding which ones are going to give them too much variance that they literally can't run that because they're worried about it not landing. And then that fucking up the strat. Like, you can't be, when we see in pro games at the highest level, if you fuck up the smoke wall outside, for example, it can have massive ramifications, same as like missing a Mirage window smoke. They can have huge implications on how the round can play out.
If it's a 90% that you're throwing, that the smoke is going to land, you're not going to throw it.
You want 100%.
Yeah, you're not going to throw it that way. It's not.
I kind of feel the same. Yeah, I feel the same. I don't think any level of, like, obviously, even when you were using the W jump throw bind, there was a chance that somebody forgot the lineup, someone fucking got blocked or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But with something that is now going to be an input error based on either you fucking it up or there being a variance, right? I'm not going to say which one way or the other. If there is a risk that could sizably impact the way that a round functions, I'm with you, Prof. I don't think that you're going to be attempting it. And I wonder what type of implications that will have on the current meta of how smokes are being thrown and what that enables. Instas from spawn enable a lot of things on, like, taking Mirage, taking mid on Mirage straight away, and the same for Ancient. So
I was going to say, what might be really interesting to see is to compare how many top mid smokes are thrown for the RMR Closed qualifiers on Mirage versus window smokes for the behind it.
Before.
Just to see how many teams are like, we give up on this for now.
just do the easy one, guys.
I think it's that's probably gonna be the biggest thing that I'll be keeping my eyes on, because I think this whole snap tap conversation regarding like pros using it, I think it was almost like a witch hunt type of scenario going in from the people in the community, right? Like, oh, this guy's only playing well because of fucking snap tap. And like I said before,
we just saw Vitality winning the tournament when none of the players have it. So
doesn't Zoe use a Wooting? He was one of the early Wooting adopters. Maybe he doesn't use it anymore.
From my understanding, Vitality are required to use like their sponsor peripherals.
It's extra fire, isn't it?
Extra fire.
At least for their keyboard. I don't think they're obligated for mice, but I think that's the thing.
Because it has the flags and stuff on it. So once upon a time, Zoe was a Wooting user, but I guess not anymore. Yeah, and that was another thing.
In chat confirms.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So he was, but he isn't. Fair enough.
I mean, the thing is, like, there are examples to both sides. You know, there are some players who have had like upticks in performances like ever since we suspected they started using it, but there are players who literally like haven't had any sort of impact on them or have just played bad with that. So it's not like just 1-to-1. You know, you can say this guy has snapped up, so he's going to be playing better.
You'd be curious to know if with Valve having this detection system, if they realized on like matchmaking level that players with it played significantly better.
I'd be surprised about that, to be honest.
Because
but yeah,
what we spoke about before, it is more likely that it has bigger impact on a worse player. So it would be interesting to know that.
Sticko did make a comment, by the way. I don't know what it was in relation to specifically, but he said the same way that Dust 2 Hinge Smoke died from T-Spawn if you didn't have scoped weapon and you couldn't use show position numbers.
Yeah, that's like about changing the smokes lineups that we're not going to use and stuff. That
right.
is not 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest concern at the moment from the pros. Like, is shit. Things are going to have to change.
They have to change. Yeah.
Right.
They have to relearn stuff. Nobody loves that.
Because they're going to have to go through, and it's not just about like practicing it, because practicing it is one thing, but like I think it's also identifying how that is going to change rounds. Like, and that's
timing,
or if you can replicate it. Yeah.
Yes.
In a different way that is consistent.
Yeah. Well, okay. I guess we talk about this for a while.
You know what I'm kind of wondering about, by the way. This might be an underrated or something that nobody ever thinks about, but does it mean because there's a world where you might leave this on by accident, or you turn it on by accident, or you just whatever? Could it be that this decision will have an even more negative impact on the usage of these keyboards because people will just throw them away, not to make sure there will never be any accident, you know? So is it going to actually have the inverse effect where nobody will use the keyboards because they're going to be worried about getting caught?
I feel like they should just. Sad. I feel like they will just. There has to be something that just like disables it
entirely
from a software side. So you need to like go into the thing and activate something. But there has been some discussion that Nico had it on accidentally. He didn't even know. Like, I don't know.
If anything, I think it was the opposite, where people thought they had it, but they didn't have it on. I think that I've heard cases like that
mode.
where people thought they had it, but it was just rapid trigger that they felt, and that alone made a difference to some people. Like quite a big difference. So I think that was also something that that was the case. I mean, that was the case for me as well when I was trying it at first.
But you didn't have it on.
No. It was not about not having it on, but I noticed that part much more at the beginning until I started realizing what exactly
Sure.
SnapTap does. So like at the beginning, the much more obvious part was rapid trigger.
I got a DM from Ragen, by the way, that said that they hit every single smoke, including jump throw smokes in practice. The only problem comes when you're double clicking the nades, but even the double click is still 95% secure.
Well, that's crazy because of having to do the release on both keys simultaneously, right? Like that's.
I think the thing with that is that it accounts for how quickly you release either one, so it does have like a margin of error, whereas like the other one would release both. The bind would release both keys at the same time, whereas now I don't think it's even possible to like always have that one consistent.
Regin's got to be careful with that though, right? Because if we watch his team and they're missing smokes, right, that might come back to bite him in the ass a little bit there. I thought with this you were talking, Striker, about the testing of the keyboard. I know Rush, when he had the Razer one, he got a bunch of the observers or whatever, and he was saying he got them to test it and see what they thought, and he hadn't turned it on yet, and they were like, "Oh yeah, this is sick." It's like, I think it's pretty funny, like with some of that stuff that's been going on, because I remember when I tested it in Chengdu, but it was on like a laptop in Jimmy's room, and he was really hyped about it, and when I tested it, I was like, well, it feels nice, but I didn't like, for me, it kind of wasn't right it's not in a match environment, right? Like you don't really have that. So I've said this a couple of times, and I really think that if people have the money for it, get a keyboard with the actuation and the rapid trigger, and you will notice the difference between a lot of other keyboards as well. Like that, you feel more in control.
And that has nothing to do with, and that is perfectly allowed, because it has nothing to do with automation. It literally just affects like how the keyboard reacts to your press, how quickly it reacts to your press or depress. So it will not get banned. You're not going to get kicked for that. And I tested it out as much. I mean, I turned on SnapTap, turned off SnapTap, and I never got kicked with like the absolute extreme rapid trigger, which like allows you to do kind of pretty quick counter traces on its own already. And then I turned on SnapTap, and I literally got kicked within 5 seconds of trying some counter strafe, like very, very quickly. So
until yesterday, about an hour before the update, I realized that I didn't have SnapTap actually enabled because it was enabled. Well, it was enabled in like the Razer settings, but then there was a firmware update that actually enables it. So like it said it was enabled the whole time, but it never was. I was trying it. I was like, the thing is, I didn't notice much of a difference. It felt
because it wasn't on.
but it felt slightly better, and that was just the rapid trigger part of it. So and then when I updated the firmware yesterday and tried it, I was like, okay, I can. Then I noticed that there is a bit more of a difference, but even then it wasn't substantially huge. It did feel a little bit more like, I kind of got what people were saying. But even going back now, it just feels like slightly better using just rapid trigger.
We never really went as deep down the rabbit hole as we possibly could have, because like
I think people didn't really realize the full potential of it.
That's
honestly,
the thing, right? And it wasn't trained to be exploited, right? Like people were just using it as a keyboard that gave them the ability to have the perfect counter strikes.
I mean, we didn't learn about the whole like that you can actually have one key pressed and just keep tapping the other one, to do counter strafe effectively, until quite later on, from what I saw.
Yeah, I don't think anybody mastered it within the short period of time that it was on our shelves. All right, do we want to move forward? Do we want to do this other last bits and bobs, and then
let's do it.
All right,
been going for a while.
I'm gonna go take a piss. Can you guys keep the ball rolling? I can't hold my bladder anymore. I'm getting too old.
We're doing the Skinionaire.
This is the second time, man. You did the same thing in that live show as well.
It's getting tough.
Something's wrong.
No, well, yeah, maybe.
It's
I don't know.
aging.
Getting old.
It's aging. He also had a few brewski beers in Cologne, which absolutely destroys your bladder. Not destroys, just makes you pee. Who wants to be a Skinionaire? Brought to you by Skin Place with Nohte in the hottest of seats.
Do I need a
And
link for this or something?
It's gonna be probably linked in the TeamSpeak chat if Lucas likes you enough for this. Here we go.
Oh my god, he
Oh,
really
now we're
likes
getting
me. He sent it 10
78
times.
links now.
Nice.
That's for bringing the attitude. Anyway, these are questions. Actually, this was asked for by Chad. Questions are about the road to Shanghai, so the open close qualifiers kind of stuff, cutoff dates, and similar things are among the questions.
If there's a cutoff date there, man, I would.
So
only questions about NA though, right?
There is a question about NA. So are you ready?
Let's go.
Obviously, write skin place in chat for a chance to win whatever no turns. And the question number 1. How long is the break between the RMR Closed qualifier and the RMRs themselves? Is it 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months?
Close qualifiers, or the close qualifiers start the after tomorrow. The RMRs start on November 11th or something. So it's should be. I mean, that's like 2.5 months.
That's the problem. Like it's like
I guess
down the middle
from the end, not from the start.
Okay.
Of the close qualifiers.
It's like 2 months, I guess. Oh, I should cancel by accident. There we go.
And the correct answer is
It's literally down the middle. It's like 2.5.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's tomorrow. Tomorrow it starts and then 11th. Yeah.
okay. Question number 2. Teams must submit their core roster for the RMRs by September 7th, but have some additional time for changes at subs, which lock on September 22, September 31st, or October 15th.
I remember reading this deadline, but I read it as I was getting out of bed. So I feel like it's September 22nd. That's what I remember off the top of my head, because I think any closer was going to be quite close to the major dates. And I don't think teams... Actually, I remember it being 3 weeks after the roster, so maybe it's September 31st. Now I'm second guessing myself. I think it's going to be... I think I might just go September 31st. But yeah, fuck it. I remember 22nd off the top of my head.
I remember there is an
31st.
October 15th one. I just don't remember which one it is.
Ah, it was 22nd.
Okay. So there is I don't fully understand this. They said like for subs and
there's not even a
changes.
September 31st. That was a troll answer.
There is no September
I feel double
31st.
trolled.
Yes, there is no September 31st.
We're deleting this part from the VOD.
Okay, question number 3. The America's RMR will feature which format? Single elimination, double elimination, or triple elimination, aka Swiss?
I mean, I don't think it's any different from what it was before. It should still be Swiss. I mean, there's more spots now. I think it's always Swiss if it's over a certain number of teams, though. So, it has to be Swiss.
It is Swiss. This time full, though. Like 16 teams.
Yeah.
No silly
I mean, there was
business
always
like we had
16 teams.
last
It was more like, huh?
No, wasn't there silly business last time? Because
I
they
was
had to
16
have less
teams, but it
matches?
was less spots.
I mean,
less
it's
spots
still
to
7
qualify.
now, so it's still an awkward number, but it's still there's still going to be some like last chance qualifier for the 3-2 teams, but to eliminate one of them.
Okay, next question. Which platform will host the open qualifiers?
Is
FaZe,
this for Asia?
Across, or Challenger mode? I think also for the closed. I think closed as well. This is according to Liquipedia.
Oh.
Oh.
Definitely Asia at least.
Who uses Liquipedia, man? Come on now, Prof, man.
And close. I mean, it was Acros before, so I want to say it's going to still be Acros. I mean, it was used before by PGL.
This is correct, but Across is not a platform. It's just an anti-cheat.
Why are you doing him like this?
Wow,
This
that's
is
so
fucked,
toxic.
man.
This is such a shitty
is so
set of
toxic.
questions. Who did this? Did you do this or
I
did
did
Dimitri do
this.
this?
I did this.
Oh my
I did
god.
this. I apologize for absolutely nothing. That's Muret.
Justice for Note.
Next question. If a team would play the Asia RMR and stay in Shanghai until the end of the major, how many days would they spend in China? 25,
This
30.
is fucked.
This
Or
is
35.
this is so fucked.
This is fucked. I
you
sent
got
him the
this.
question. He said, like, yeah, this is what I was looking for.
Well,
It was
the
what I
RMRs start on the 11th,
There you go.
November 11th. They go until the 20.
It doesn't
8th or
matter.
so?
And when does the major end?
Yeah, I mean,
The
it has to
15th
be. Yeah, I mean, it has to be
or the 14th.
35. 30, yeah, it has to be 35.
There you go.
Yeah.
Quick math.
Logging in 35. This is not true. It is 35.
Hey,
It is 35.
You know what? Maybe I was right with the other answers too, and September 31st actually exists. And,
It is 35. I think there's.
All right, wait. I
There's
gotta
35.
do this. I gotta do this. All right, coming up next, we're gonna do Who Wants to Be a Skinionaire, brought to you by Skin Place. Type Skin Place in chat right now for your chance to enter the draw. Lucas, can you fix that in post and just put that in the start when I went to the bathroom and then do the quiz? Thanks, Lucas. All right, so what was that? 3 out of 5?
They liked how my eyes move when I think of the wrong answer, but my screen here for the questions and my chat is way over here, so it would have done nothing.
Was that 2 out of 5, Lucas?
3 out of 5.
3 out of 5.
3 out of 5. Lucas said no. Why did you say no, Lucas?
He's lying.
Oh no, he can't fix it in post. I'm sure
I will
that's
not
probably
be
what he meant.
fixing it, Chad.
Okay. Well, you know, they got it in there anyway. I just, you know, I
I
had to
mentioned
go to
Skin
the
Place.
bathroom.
Well, what's the problem?
I know, but I wanted
But
to
he has
bring
like some deal on the side.
contractual obligation.
some
Yeah,
deal on
Martin
the
told
side.
me I have to say it with gusto.
Okay.
There you go. Did
By
he
the way, I
actually
was
say
looking
this?
through.
No.
Oh, I was looking
wouldn't
through
think so.
the tweet about what they said about that roster lock on the September 22nd. It is just about substitutions. It's like it says submit your current substitution or substitutions or make final changes, but it means in terms of substitutions. Like you can change your sub or change your coach by that date, but
Not the actual.
but nothing
core.
else. Yeah.
Shout out to Don Lay, DONL4Y. You're the winner of tonight's Skinionaire, brought to you by Skin Place. Our people reach out to your people, we'll get you sorted with your voucher or your skin. Probably your skin. I think Lucas was saying it's going to be a skin. So good luck with your skin. It's your biggest organ, your skin. Is that still true? Has the science changed?
Use sunscreen.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice, especially in summertime. All right, let's keep trucking forward. We got a couple of little topics here to just cover off, but we don't need to spend too much time on this. But yeah, so hopefully people learned a little bit from the quiz. It's just meant to be educational but entertaining. That's what a podcast hopefully should be.
Just to kind
Not all
of grab
podcasts.
onto that general major discussion, I think a topic that will come up soon, maybe more prominently in the space, is the scheduling of the RMR to the major and how teams are going to approach this, because it's, first of all, the major is in China, which doesn't have a strong scene. It's very far away to travel back and forth. And the way they're setting this up, and I feel Perfect World are expecting it to work out, is that teams that come to the RMR just stay until the end of the major, which, depending on when you come in, obviously the Asian teams, they can maybe go home because it's not that far away, and some of them maybe are from China that qualify. But the Americas and the Europe teams might be in China for like 3-4 weeks. There's like 5-6 days between the RMR and the major actually starting. So it depends on which RMR for EU, or if you're from America, that's like 3-4 weeks of being in China, and how teams will feel about that, how players will feel about that, how that will affect practice. These are all things I'm pretty sure no one is happy about from these entities. I don't know if there's going to be pushback or if some people will manage to go back and forth. There's also a visa, or do they have like multi-entry visas and stuff like that? It's going to be a discussion coming up.
I mean, yeah, for Americas, I guess there's a world where they could go back because it's like a 2-week break until the first stage of the major.
The problem is about getting the multi-entry visas.
Do you think there is? I don't know. I don't actually know that.
For me, for example, so let me, I understand that I'm in an extreme
But you're a
circumstance to most.
yeah.
I know, but other people don't live in their country, right? So
Yeah.
if I want to apply for a visa for China, they will, because I'm technically a Maltese resident on my British passport. So I can't apply on my Australian passport for a Chinese visa in Malta. I have to apply as a British individual, and they will only give you a one-time entry.
Okay.
Why are they only giving you one time? Because you're
They
British?
say that I would have to go to the embassy in the UK to get a multi-entry.
Okay.
Yeah.
But there's a reasonable amount of time, so if you really wanted to, I guess it should be possible. But yeah, I guess depends on the person.
Yeah, I suppose, but like getting Chinese visas, if you have a weaker passport, actually maybe that doesn't matter because of the allegiances that China hold. I would have to look into those things, but
yeah, it might be easier for Russians
Yeah.
to get to China than
actually
most of the
probably
others.
easier. So
I mean, I've had zero problems from. Hello.
we're
Yeah.
still
Lost the
here.
preview.
We're all good.
Okay.
I think it just goes in and out.
Okay. For me as a EU citizen, I've never had any problems in terms of a Chinese visa. I got it within a week every time. I haven't tried multi-entry or whatever.
I was gonna
And
say, I
also things
remember
might
when
have
I
changed.
when I went to Shanghai, I think multi-entry was harder. Like even the people
Okay.
there were talking about it being slightly harder to get multi-entry ones.
Okay.
That's
That's
just
going to be
something to
interesting.
consider.
Either way, like it's going to be a big discussion as we get closer for sure because people are going to start planning it out once all the teams are done, or some of them probably are in those plans already
Yeah,
now.
but like if you are a RMR, a second EU RMR team,
You're not. Yeah, you can't.
you're not
can't
going
go
back
anywhere.
unless you maybe qualify directly for the group for the like second
Right.
group
Yeah,
stage.
maybe.
I think that the thing with this is though, and this is me just being a boomer. Like I understand why we're bringing this up because this is going to have a negative impact, right? And you're acknowledging it now in a decent lead up time, Prof. And this could have even been acknowledged earlier and probably was discussed by some people. And I'm sure those in the know and those involved in it have definitely had things to say. But the truth of the matter is, this is just the way it's going to have to be.
Yeah.
Like this is where we're going for the major. This is decided upon. And if you want to compete, then you're going to have to just abide by whatever PGL and Perfect World are telling you needs to happen at the time, because otherwise you risk the chance of not getting to come back into the country or some of those issues. And I know that's such a shit like angle. It's like, well, then why are we going to China in the first place? That's not a conversation. That,
I think
like,
the problem is that it's not the same for all teams. Some teams will be longer.
Yes.
They're longer because of the RMR scheduling.
And they'll suffer, right? Well, I guess they could practice against the new teams coming in.
But do you want
I
to
wonder
practice about these
how much teams want to do that. Yeah.
So,
well, let's say you're there for the Americas, and then you're going to play against the Europeans, right? Like,
at least
like,
you could play against the ones that maybe aren't so expected
like
to
majors
go through, or
are
they're not going to be a
usually-
big threat.
Majors are 2 weeks, and people don't even boot camp directly before the major, so they can like the best teams, like they want to boot camp, have a few days off, and then go to the major. Like that's kind of how I see most big teams do it. And now they definitely can't do that, and they want to have like a few days break just to kind of reset before going to a tournament, to not be on the road for 3 weeks, 4 weeks in a row. So I feel like that's going to affect individuals negatively. I think there's no way around it. Like it's less than ideal to be in a hotel for 4 weeks in a row.
For sure. Yeah, no, for sure. I think like, yeah. Well, Prof,
Just
get excited for all the drama that kicks off with it, knowing that you said, I told you so, motherfuckers. Now you can say, I told you so.
Yeah.
That's nice. It's always nice to say, I told you so. All right. Tomorrow, kicking off is going to be the closed qualifiers for, excuse me, Europe. There's 2 groups. They're Swiss, and the groups are Ents, Sangal, Bleed, Gamer Legion, Bait, Koi, Paravision, Sinners, TSM, Monty, Enterprise, One Win, Eklot, Rhino, Unity, BC Game, not with Joel's, or Joel. Sorry, Joel's is the Finn. Group B, Saw, Big, Sashi, Namiga, Zero Tenacity, Passion, 9 Pandas, Johnny Speeds, Cloud9, OG, Rebels, Amcal, Permitter, Acrid, Xiang, Xpera, and Insilo, and they would be hoping to join the likes of, let me keep reading, G2, Spirit, Navi, MOUZ, Vitality, Astralis, FaZe, VP, Eternal Fire, NIP, Heroic, 3D Max, Falcons, Betboom, Fnatic, and Aurora, who are already at the RMRs.
Did you open my article? I hope you did.
Yes, I'm reading it right now.
Let's go.
So that's the action starting tomorrow. Are the IPs available?
I don't know how that works actually. Not sure. I mean, that's close qualifier. I don't know.
Should be.
Surely.
I guess so.
Surely.
I don't think they have enough streams for this anyway. I don't know who's in. There's no word about streams, so I have no idea.
I might find something to do.
Maybe I'll find some information on the platform that hosts it, Challenger mode.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it can get a bit laggy over there. So, of these two groups, 8 teams from each group will go and join the squads who are already locked in at the RMRs. Do we have anything we want to touch on with this? Really, we don't have to get too in depth. I don't want to do prediction or anything.
Just some nice teams to follow along, and obviously. It is fucking August 20th and it's make or break for these people's seasons because the scheduling is so fucking dumb. But it is like for the likes of, I don't know, Open Up, Ents, Big. Cloud9 just made a team. OG, I don't know who expects anything, but like Gamer Legion, Bleed to some degree as well. Like these are all teams that just have to qualify, and Saw's there as well. Hopefully they don't have big event hangover. Even though it's possible for sure that they suffer a bit from being on the road for so long and coming into this. But yeah, this is huge. I think it's kind of flying under the radar. It didn't hit me until now, but if they don't make it through, they're not at the major, and this is what everyone's fucking playing for.
Yeah.
So it's a huge tournament for the next few days.
Yeah, and maybe some early roster changes for some of these teams, right? But unfortunately for a lot of them, they're just going to be in the tier 2, tier 3 kind of mix of changes. So that's going to be interesting to see how it all unfolds. But this is maybe one of the last times we'll get something like this if we do go into next year and we don't have these anymore, right? If we don't have RMRs, then we wouldn't have. Do you guys think we're going to have RMRs next year?
I think in some regions for sure.
I have a hard time seeing how they will solve Asia without it, but
what about Europe? Europe's the main focus. Everything else is just ancillary.
I hope they
would
do.
say no.
Yeah,
I think they might not. Yeah.
I think America and Europe is not.
If they do away with RMRs, do they expand the whole major then? Or do they just completely do away with RMRs?
I think they just do away with RMRs for both America and EU, and then they do the rest of the world with RMRs or some qualification process because there's just not enough events or exposure going on. So they kind of they need those events to work it out. Shout out to Askers. There's China has included Australia in its visa waiver program, but we won't be going to China to commentate the majors, so it doesn't matter anyway.
They're all remote in Romania?
It also says you can enter China without a visa for no more than 15 days, which is not enough.
just barely not enough.
Enough to get in there and say hello, though.
You need 16 or whatever for the.
Then you go out and you come back.
Yeah, I've done that before. Shanghai's not. I like Shanghai. Shanghai's all right. Chengdu was good fun too. All right, where are we at? Major cycle roster. We did all that stuff.
Do we want to touch on who we think is going to make it through the RMR qualifiers or no?
Well, you can throw some names out. I'm not going to sit here and fucking.
Yeah,
it's like there's so many like who the fuck knows.
Do you have a hot take for? Do you have like under talked team that you think is going to make through,
or a hot team that is not going to make it through,
and over talked? These are two new terms I just introduced. Hope you write it in the dictionary.
Before 3 Czech teams make it to the RMR. All from the same, all in the same group. I'm sure none of them will make it exactly. Somehow 3 teams in the same group.
I can do one hot take.
Okay, go for it.
Maybe I'm gonna say Sangal is gonna 3-0 their group for Swiss.
Okay,
there we go.
Who are they playing first? 1 win. Okay.
Jodo, Youngster, Samey, LNZ, and XFloud. A lot of players. A lot of names.
They've been doing decently and online. Like they've been winning some of these CCTs, a bunch of them actually, and then so they're definitely like one of these up and coming teams that hasn't really gotten a chance to play. Wait, they played EPL or something? No,
they played something recently.
Like, I don't think they played
EPL,
but they qualified for EPL, I think.
But QB was in the team still, wasn't it? Or am I thinking I'm going too far back in time? I remember seeing Sangal at an event. I forget what event it was though. It was probably even a long time ago.
Insane.
EPL?
I think it was EPL.
Sleepy hell.
It was a while ago.
Not EPL. They haven't played. Yeah, they haven't played any EPL. Big lands this year, really.
No.
Yeah, this would have been like.
Oh, they were at the Europe RMR a couple of years in a row.
That it?
Or a couple of events in a row. It was Antwerp and Rio. That's what I remember.
Okay.
I did the RMR when they did it. Yeah, I remember this.
All right. So yeah, that's on tomorrow. I don't know what the viewing is going to be like, but it's a big deal. So if you guys are into watching Counter-Strike, get into that, which I assume you are because you're here at the fucking Counter-Strike podcast. And finally, the Blast Premier Fall Showdown is also on tomorrow. I would say it kind of pales in comparison of importance. Is Cloud9 going to be playing in both things?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my
You know,
There's a
like,
couple of
some
teams
these
playing in
man,
both, I think.
Hamcow,
There's, like-
OG, Cloud9. Oh,
There's also
Zero
like
tenacity.
Falcons are not playing in the qualifier because they made it straight through, but they're playing in that. They're playing in the Rio qualifiers, and they are playing in what's the last thing? I forgot now.
CCT.
Oh,
South Europe.
Bedboom Dacha.
Oh,
back, man.
So that like there's for the next 10 days
Dacha is
there.
9 days long.
crazy,
guys.
right?
It's 9 days long. It has what, 12 teams?
Get excited,
What
Prof.
the fuck?
I love
is
the
this?
reply to you on Twitter, whoever that was.
The
Get
guy that replied,
excited.
"This is Team Spirits Majors." I don't know if he was watching the show and then he made it based on my comment, but I hope he didn't because that's even funnier.
Man, do you see what
They're-
happened to me
they're-
while
they're
we've been doing
respectful.
this fucking podcast?
What's happened
Some
to you?
dog water fucking Twitter account took something I said in complete jest
Oh, I
and
saw
did
that.
this.
That's
What
the
is wrong
news,
with
right?
these dopey cunts, mate? Like what?
Sometimes they misinterpret shit kind of crazily.
It's just
Oh,
it's fucking
My-
out of control.
okay, what the fuck?
Out of control, man.
Bro.
Ah,
I fucking hate do you see where we are in like the news social media level? And I blame everyone. I blame everyone
'Cause
for
everybody's trolling. Like everything is about trolling now.
but it's like, but why do people also believe it? Because like shit like this gets retweeted by actual people in the community, and then they're like, "Oh, this is actually real. Oh, I didn't care to confirm." It's like, bro, it's just like random Twitter website. Why are you not Twitter account? Why are you retweeting this shit? Like what? Everyone's a fucking boomer. It's like
I
my
feel like
mom showing me Facebook.
I feel like people just
fucking-
don't care anymore about spreading misinformation. It's kind of crazy because there's even that that twitlonger about the whole Elevate group that
Yeah.
went out, and then there was the post on Reddit that got to the top and was there for 12 plus hours. It was retweeted by everyone, but I mean, don't get me wrong, I've heard things that were in that story, but it's not like none of it's verifiable, and you're just all spreading this information about people without anyone actually having any credible evidence linked in there to back it up. And it's the same thing with this, or like even
I mean,
today
just
with
to put it, I don't think anyone saw this. So the tweet is, did I close it already?
And
Let's
also
do it.
there's like some red flags there, which is like screenshots exist of this, but I chose not to share them. You know,
Yes,
things like
right.
this. You know, like
yeah.
all these things.
But I mean,
that
even
are
the,
kind
the
of
Chad thing is like from, I'm not going to name the Twitter account, but it's literally a picture of Chad, which is
looking
our
quite
picture.
cheeky. It's quite cheeky
It's our
picture.
picture. No credit to the picture, to the person, to the stream, of course. It just said, I would set Kerrigan to Astralis to replace Stare, and Robs to Vitality to replace Mezzi, written incorrectly. Brocky to Navi for Wonderful doesn't sound bad. This is literally like completely not people that watch this know what was said in
And
this
also,
episode. This is
like, the
completely
next-
taken out of context.
the next thing is exactly like what we were talking about, like in that context, which is about HooXi. You know, Astralis are reportedly eyeing HooXi as their next captain. Never said this. Striker broke the news. Sponge added that they need an authoritative figure in the team. And it was at first.
When
It
did you say this?
was Sponge added that they are looking for an authoritative figure in the team. They changed this. I saw the original version. But it's
But
funny
you
that
didn't
they
say
changed
anything like
your
this.
Part, but it's funny that they changed your part of the misinformation, but not mine. They just attributed this report to me as if I said it. Like, yes, this is absolutely what they're looking for.
Oh, it's
Bro.
too good.
Jesus, man.
This is why I want to do a podcast with Harry that we're naming not a Counter-Strike podcast, where I don't talk about anything Counter-Strike related, because then I can't be misquoted and fucking
You can. Chad
Oh.
says Trump should be president.
Dude, the Americans love it when I talk, and when I say love it, they absolutely hate it when I talk about the politics. Completely joking, because I don't know anything about it or
No.
even care remotely. Like, I'm just talking mad shit because you get a reaction. They are going off their tree. Why are these foreigners? First of all, that's hilarious. Like when we're
And why do you care? You're not going to vote there. Like, what does your
No,
opinion
but
matter?
fuck.
Like, who cares?
and you can tell the world revolves around them when they go, why are these foreigners? Right. And it's like, well, actually, it's like a global kind of podcast. We're talking about anything,
Yeah.
you know, anyway.
I always love when they're talking about Europe as like one country. Always, it's like
Yeah.
it's all the same people as well.
Sorry, no, we kind of you copping some
Anyway,
strays there.
always
all good.
love making
Yeah.
fun of Americans. Love you, Ryan.
Not
all
even
right.
American. So
You know, actually, just
Canada, America. See, well, I just tried my attempt.
And just to finish on a slightly funny note, so I met
Yes.
one person in esports goes to a lot of events, and we saw each other a lot, but I don't think we ever spoke. And we were introduced in a little group, not introduced, we were like in a group, and I was like, oh, I saw you a lot around. I don't think we ever spoke. And this person was like, oh yeah, you're Ryan, right?
Oh dear.
And that was it. That was one of the biggest insults I ever received.
That's tough. It's hard to come back from that. All right, guys, as we say on this show every episode, Valve don't give a fuck about the game, man. They're just trying to kill Counter-Strike, man. They can't do anything right, man. We say that every episode. And as per every episode, you guys at home can have your say. Get loud, post fake news, get in the comments, be upset. That's what we're talking about. That's what we want. Outrage,
Try not
society.
to post fake news. Let's start there. Try not to.
No, misquote until the cows come home. Don't stop. We know Valve don't give a fuck about the game, man. Anyway, that's been HLTV Confirmed. Notes joined us. Thanks for joining us. No, I'm glad you fixed your technical issues.
Yep, me too.
Prof, you did some good nodding tonight. Striker, you did some good breaking of news about Astralis. Lucas, happy birthday again. Thanks. And shout out to our sponsors, 1xBet and SkinPlace. We'll be back next time. I don't give a fuck about the game, man.
The world is changing quickly. Shoot it.
The world is changing, but one thing remains the same. Victories with 1xBet.
Sell in-game items at the best prices in just a couple of clicks. We are the biggest instant sell service for in-game items like Counter-Strike 2, Dota 2, and Rust. Easy selling process and instant withdrawal of funds to the most popular payment methods. More than 140,000 deals and 50,000 active sellers every month. Use promo code HLTV5 and get a 5% bonus on the sale of your skins. SkinPlace. Sell items now.
Since the dawn of CSGO, we have been there. Observers of all that competition can reveal. Elation, fear, triumph, and heartache reach out from every frame. From the small studios and conference rooms to the epic arenas, the feeling is still the same. We live and breathe this game. This was CSGO Through the Lens. Buy now at hltv.org/shop.